significant, not only increase in cases, but an increase in positivity level, that the American people know just how important it is to listen to what their state and local health officials are directing them to do. Please.
I was curious, it seems like the wearing of masks has kind of become a political statement, or I guess the decision not to wear a mask. Are you concerned about that? And is there a message that you would like to send to people about the importance of wearing masks?
Well, we think that the first principle is that people ought to listen to their state and local authorities. I mean, I have to tell you, President Trump and I couldn't be more grateful for the partnership we forged with governors around the country. I spoke to the governor of Florida, of Arizona, of Texas, just within the last 12 hours. And I told them that from this podium today, we would remind their citizens to heed the guidance and the direction of state and local officials. In some cases, there's statewide guidance with regard to facial coverings and with regard to events and gatherings. In other cases, there are specific countywide or citywide directives. And we just believe that what's most important here is that people listen to the leadership in their state and the leadership in their local community and adhere to that guidance, whether that have to do with facial coverings, whether it have to do with the size of gatherings. And we'll continue to reinforce that message. Please.
I've got two questions, actually. You just mentioned the importance of listening to state and local authorities. What is the correlation between the spike in cases that we're seeing in states like Texas and Florida and the way those states handled their reopening? Was it too much too soon? And secondly, I wanted to ask Dr. Fauci, you said in an interview that, quote, something is not working. What isn't working? And did you all in your meeting today come up with a plan to fix whatever isn't working?
Well, let me respond first, and then I'll let Dr. Fauci address it as well, and Dr. Birx may as well. I think there will be a temptation for people to look at these Sun Belt states that have been reopening and putting people back to work, and suggest that the reopening has to do with what we're seeing in the last week or so. But frankly, in the case of each of these states, they reopened, in some cases, almost 2 months ago. And their test cases, their new cases that from testing was low and steady. Their positivity rate was low. What we're observing today, and I've heard this from Florida, I've heard this from Texas, and some other states along the Sun Belt, is that we're seeing more and more young people under the age of 35 who are testing positive. In many cases, they have no symptoms, but they're coming forward and confirming that they have contracted the coronavirus. We're working with the states, and you speak about our plan. We've got CDC personnel embedded in every state in the union. We're surging more CDC personnel as requested to each of these states to help them unpack what the data is suggesting. I know the governor of Texas announced some new measures this morning, which we fully support. But what we're going to continue to do is give our state leadership the very best information, the very best counsel that we have. And if there's one message that comes through today, I hope it is saying to younger Americans in these states and in these counties in particular that they are a big part of the numbers that we are seeing in new cases. And while there may not be a significant threat of a serious health outcome to them, I know of no young person, and I got 3 20-somethings in my immediate family. No young person would ever want to inadvertently expose a mom, a dad, a grandmother, a grandfather, or someone who's vulnerable to a serious result. And so alerting them that there's been spread among that age group, urging them to take countermeasures and heed what their governors and local officials are directing will be our continued strategy. Dr. Fauci, did you want to respond?
So what I meant by what is not working, and this is not anybody's fault or any institution's fault, is that what we're dealing with right now is community spread in the context of a substantial proportion of the people who are getting infected do not know they're infected, they're not symptomatic, they're asymptomatic individuals. The classic paradigm of identification, isolation, and contact tracing to actually contain that is very difficult to make that work under those circumstances. You superimpose upon that the fact that even with identification, isolation, and contact tracing, often the dots are not connected. If you get on the phone and talk to people who are in some of these communities, you find that a lot of it is done by phone. And when it's done by phone, maybe half of the people don't even want to talk to one who they think is a government representative. If you live in a community that is mostly brown or black, you're in a different situation that maybe 70% of them don't really want to talk to you. You can identify a contact, but you don't isolate them because you don't have the facility to isolate them. That is what's not working. So what we're going to do, and we are doing, and you're going to be hearing about this, flooding the area of a community to get a feel for what's out there, particularly among the asymptomatics. So in other words, it's a paradigm shift because we're dealing with young people, people who are going to be asymptomatic, and people who are getting infected in a community setting, not an outbreak setting where you know who to identify, isolate, and contact trace. Yeah. That's what I meant.
So Dr. Fauci, Dr. Fauci and Dr. Birx.
Can I just want to finish it, expand his thought for just a second. About 3 months ago, we talked about how important it was to have community at the center. And I think when you talk about what's going to be different, and part of the reason why the president and vice president have asked me to go out to Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona, is to not only meet with the state and local health officials, but to meet with the community groups so that the community groups can help us support community-specific messaging. Public health messaging, when you just keep saying the same thing over and over again and the people get tone deaf to it, it's because it's not tailored to their specific circumstances and they don't see that message resonating in their lives. We've had to do this across the world. I've done this over and over again for HIV, TB, and malaria. At the center of this has to be the community, and the community will help us identify who needs to be tested. They'll help us identify which households have the most vulnerability in them and how we can really go into those communities and support that response at a very local and ground level. When we started this, we were very much facility-based, and we know facilities carry us a long way. But if we want to change the transmission rates in these metros, in specific communities and in specific parts of those metros, we've got to walk side by side with our community leaders and our community groups that know how to translate our scientific dogma and information down to a level where people will understand it, hear it, and act on it. I know when they hear it and understand it, they will act on it. And so that's how, when you ask what's going to be different, that has already started, and it's already going to be different.
Dr. Birx.
Just let me add to that. That's exactly what we did with HIV 30 years ago. We got the community involved in helping us to outreach. And I think that's very important to underscore what Dr. Birx said. And that's exactly what's being planned to do, to get people who know the community, who live in the community, who the community trusts.
Right, let's go. How about right here?
Do you expect the death rate to go up in the next 3 or 4 weeks, just like we're seeing the rate of infection go up now?
Well, our hope and our prayer is that it's not the case. We've seen, as you noted, we've seen a precipitous decline in fatalities. And again, one is too many. We grieve the loss of every American life. But the fact that 2 months ago we had lost 2,500 Americans in a single day, in 2 days this week we lost less than 300 Americans, it is a testament to our healthcare workers, to all of the medicines that Secretary Azar just described being available in all 50 states. It's a testament to the efforts of the American people, and we hope as we continue to engage that we'll continue to see those numbers decline. The other reason we're encouraged is because at this point, when we look at our losses, roughly 2.5% of all of our losses took place in people under the age of 25. I mean, younger Americans, and in each case, or at least 90% of the cases, they were people with pre-existing conditions, underlying conditions that contributed to the sad outcome. So as we see that in Florida and in Texas, they've reported to us that half or even more than half of the new cases that are showing up every day are people under the age of 35 or younger Americans, in most cases asymptomatic. Our hope is that those younger, healthy Americans, like most have already, will continue to go through the coronavirus, will recover. But our message today, as we've spent so much energy in the last 4 months protecting the most vulnerable, I mean, we've deployed testing resources, we've supported states' efforts. States across the country in the last month have answered our call to test all the residents of their nursing homes, to set up a plan to test all of the staff on a regular basis. We need to protect the most vulnerable, and we want a message going out to younger Americans, particularly those along the Sun Belt, in these counties where we see new cases on the rise, positivity on the rise, to know that we need them to do their part to make sure and protect the most vulnerable, so that we don't see those losses rise. But it's in the hands of the American people, and particularly young people in this country.
All right, guys, last question.
Right there.
President, thank you. A question for you, and then a question for the doctors on childcare.
Sure.
On the campaign, it really does sound, though,
Like you're saying, do as we say, not as we do. You're telling people to listen to local officials, but in Tulsa, you defied local health officials to have an event that, even though you say it didn't result in a spike, dozens of Secret Service agents, dozens of campaign staffers are now quarantined after positive tests. And then in Arizona, one of the hardest hit states, you packed a church with young people who weren't wearing masks. So how can you say that the campaign is not part of the problem that Dr. Fauci laid out?
Well, I want to remind you again that the freedom of speech and the right to peaceably assemble is enshrined in the Constitution of the United States. And even in a health crisis, the American people don't forfeit our constitutional rights. And working with state officials, as we did in Oklahoma and as we did in Arizona, we're creating settings where people can choose to participate in the political process. And we'll continue to do that. I think it's really important that we recognize how important freedom and personal responsibility are to this entire equation. But allowing younger Americans to understand, particularly in the counties that are most impacted, the unique challenges that we're facing in their age group, we think is important. But look, it's so important that we recognize that as we issued guidance to reopen America now 2 months ago, and now as all 50 states are opening up our country again, people are going back to work, American everyday life is being restored kind of one step, one day at a time. I think it's important that we remind ourselves this is not a choice between the health of the American people and a strong economy. There are profound health implications to the lockdowns through which we just passed. I heard a statistic not long ago at a task force briefing that in one jurisdiction there had been a 50% increase in the number of people presenting at emergency rooms having attempted suicide. I mean, there are profound mental health issues. There are profound economic issues. People needing to be back to work, and so our objective here today is just to make sure the American people know. In 34 states, the cases are largely stable, and there's no combination of rising cases and rising positivity rates. That's a tribute to the American people. And in the 16 states we're focused on today, we simply want to equip particularly young people with the knowledge of the part that they can play in stemming the rising tide of new cases, not because the coronavirus represents a significant threat to them. In most cases, it doesn't if you're a younger American, but because no younger American would ever want to spread the coronavirus to someone who would have a serious outcome. But I'm grateful for the time today. We hope this has been helpful. And we'll be back with more information as time goes on. Thank you.
We have been listening to the live briefing from the coronavirus task force from the White House, led, of course, by Vice President Pence, really hearing from him and his colleagues on the task force. In a nutshell, over an hour then they talked. They said they have made real progress, pointing to New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, New Orleans. They have 17 states right now, the Vice President said, where they have some problems. They say it's not because of the reopening, it's for other issues. They characterize it as specific outbreaks in specific communities. And they say we should listen to our local authorities, and they particularly pointed a finger at young people, not because it's their fault, but because it turns out a lot of young people are contracting the disease and are asymptomatic, and they thank the young people for going out and getting testing to try to get their arms around it. So that's been the coronavirus task force briefing coming live from HHS, and now we need a market check from Charlie Pellet.
I thank you very much, David Weston. Here's what's going on. 2-week low for the U.S. stock market. It is a down Friday. We're on track for a losing week. S&P lower now by 53, down about 1.8%. The Dow down 571 this Friday, down 2.2%. NASDAQ down 178. That is a drop of 1.8%. 10-year up 15-30 seconds yield there, 0.63%. Gold up 0.2%. Crude, West Texas Intermediate down 1.1%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That, David Weston, is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Thank you so much, Charlie Pellet. We welcome now Carly Fiorina. She's the founder and chairman of Carly Fiorina Enterprises and Unlocking Potential. She also has an important newsletter out every week on LinkedIn called Leadership Matters. And Carly, thank you for waiting with us and listening to that. I think it is terribly important to have you here right now because you are a practicer of, but also a student of leadership. Give us your sense of what we just heard from the Vice President and the task force.
Well, it's interesting. I think one of the realities is people are a bit confused right now. I think the stock market is a bit confused. Is this over? Is this not? I mean, today you see the stock market down over 500 points as Texas and Florida shut down bars. And I must say I was a bit confused listening to that briefing because on the one hand, cases are spiking, states are stepping back from reopening, and on the other hand, there are clear signs that the Vice President and the task force put forward of progress. More asymptomatic cases, less fatalities, more young people who get through this much better than older people. And so honestly, I think a lot of people aren't quite sure what to do, and that is why I think you see people continuing to be reluctant to bring their workforces back or continuing to be reluctant to show up at events. I mean, yes, we see pictures of packed beaches, but we also see that I think economic activity is going to continue to be, as you and I have said many times, a long, slow slog back to normal.
And Carly, one of the things that I thought listening to it, and this is not necessarily criticism, but I was puzzled. We have a problem. They admitted there's a problem. I don't know what we're doing about it. And by we, I mean either the federal government or state or local governments or us as individual citizens. I don't think I heard, at least I didn't get it, what the Vice President was saying somebody's doing about it.
Well, yes, and I do think, I mean, the one thing that I heard was, okay, we're going to change our testing strategy. We're going to go to pool testing as opposed to individual testing and contact tracing, okay? Of course, the simplest thing of all is to say socially distant, wear a mask, and wash your hands. Obviously, I think the Vice President didn't appreciate those questions, but there's no doubt that wearing a mask has become an issue in some places. And so, and bars are shutting in Florida and Texas because you can't socially distant if you're stuck in a bar, not stuck in a bar, if you're going to a bar and throwing back a few hour after hour.
So Carly, before I let you go, just quickly here, you now are saying you're voting for Joe Biden, the Democrat. Why? Because
I think leadership matters, and I think character counts. It's It's not because I agree with the Democratic Party platform. It's not because I don't have policy disagreements with Biden. I do. I have some policy disagreements with Trump as well. But I do think leadership matters and character counts.
Carly Fiorina, thank you so very much. And this is Bloomberg. Oh, I'm so very sorry. We're going all the way to 5930. Carly, are you still there? Carly Fiorina, are you still there? Oh, I'm so sorry. That's my fault. We normally get off the air at that time, but we decided to extend it because we had that live briefing, actually, from the White House Coronavirus Task Force. And right now, we're going to go to Jason Kelly, who's coming up next on Bloomberg Business Week and has had something of a huge interview this week with the one and only LeBron James.
Hi, David. It's so nice to hear your voice.
Yeah, good to hear yours as well.
It's
been a while, Jason. I missed you as well. So I might ask what's coming up, but really I want to ask about LeBron James.
Incredible. It was such a treat to catch up with him at a time where everyone wanted to know what he had to say. This was actually an interview I'd been working on for months and months and months around this new company, this combined company that he and Maverick Carter are launching. And we were initially, I met with them in February in Los Angeles to, talk about this. And then obviously the world changed so dramatically. And so he was nice enough, both of them were nice enough to spend some time with me in just this week. Sorry, but the days are all blending together. On Tuesday, LeBron was in Akron getting ready to go back to work. But he obviously had a lot to say about the state of the world. So it was quite a conversation.
And what do you have coming up today?
So today we're going to hear a little bit more of that, but obviously we're going to be looking at the markets in a pretty meaningful way. A big sell-off, you heard and our listeners heard about the coronavirus task force. We're going to check in with one of our doctors to hear about that. We're going to hear from the CEO of Albertsons. They had a little bit of a disappointing debut on the public market. And then this is a name probably familiar to you from the 80s, Richard Marx. Remember him?
Yeah,
I'll be right here waiting for you. He's doing virtual concerts. So we're going to hear about what's happening in the music industry. So you get a little something of everything on our show, David.
Well, you always do. 3 hours, you get to cover an awful lot of things.
Oh, it's 4 now. It's 4.
Sorry, I can't keep track of anything. 4 hours, you can keep going that long, eh? And are you doing it all from home, Jason?
I am. I was in the office a little bit this week for the LeBron interview, but yeah, back here in our home of Westchester, yours and mine. And it's amazing what technology can do most of the time.
Yeah, it is. But once again, congratulations. That was a wonderful interview with LeBron James. I really enjoyed it very much. Thank you very much. That's Jason Kelly coming up on Bloomberg Business Week. That's coming up right in a few minutes. That does it for this week. For Balance of Power, I'm David Weston, and this is Bloomberg.
This is WBBR New York, WDCH-FM Bowie, Baltimore, Washington, WJZ-FM HD2 Catonsville, WRCA Watertown, WBOS HD2 Brookline, Boston, WNBP Newburyport, KNEW Oakland, KOSF 103.7 FM HD2 San Francisco, and SiriusXM Satellite Radio Channel 119. This is Bloomberg Business Week. Insight from the reporters and editors who bring you America's most trusted business magazine. Plus, global business, finance, and tech news as it happens. Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Masser and Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
And live from New York and New Jersey, this is Bloomberg Business Week, a Friday edition, a day when we heard from the White House Coronavirus Task Force, an update that unfortunately isn't a good one. It feels like it's New York in March all over again for the rest of the country. And investors, they are not happy about it. U.S. stocks dropping to a 2-week low as that resurgence of the new virus infections, halting progress on this reopening that we are so focused on. And it's a tale of two worlds in many ways. Let's get the numbers first before we get to the show. Charlie Pellet is with us with an update. Hey, Charlie.
All right. We have got stocks selling off right now. Just 2 hours to go for the ahead of the closing bell here with the Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ. They're all trading lower. S&P is down 618 down 58 points right now, down 1.9%. It is the Dow that is down 618, lower by 2.4%. NASDAQ down 190, a drop now of 1.9%. So again, to clarify, S&P down 57, a drop of 1.9%. The Dow down 608, NASDAQ down 189. 10-year up 15.30 seconds with a yield of 0.63%. Gold is higher by $4 the ounce, up 0.3%, 17.68 the ounce. And West Texas Intermediate crude down 1.1%, 38.28 a barrel. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Whoa, it's Friday. There's like crazy things in the air. And I have to say, Jason, just listening to that White House coronavirus task force update, it really felt like we had gone back in time, right?
I know. It's amazing. It's amazing. Yeah, I don't know. We were talking a little bit earlier today. I don't quite know how to feel about it, other than kind of mad and upset because of everything that we went through here in New York. And to see this sort of the tables being turned, and not to be glib about it, but we suffered pretty dramatically in this area. I think it's safe to say, and really went into lockdown while a lot of the rest of the country was like, it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. There was no real leadership from a federal level. I don't think that is too impolitic to say, and I think we're paying the price.
And I have to say, I was listening to some analysis that David was doing with Carly Fiorina, that there's mixed messages coming out of that task force now, again, which only makes it more complicated. And you and I have talked over and over again, if there's any question about safety and security, people are going to, a lot of people will hold back, and that's going to hold back ultimately us getting out of this health crisis and getting the economy back. And that is playing out in the financial markets. Stocks are down today.
It absolutely is. All right, let's set the Business Week agenda with our team. We've got them assembled to help us understand how investors are reacting to this. And as you heard from Charlie, it's not positively, to say the least. Vincent Signorella, global macro strategist for Bloomberg. He's on the phone from White Plains. Dave Wilson, our stocks editor for Bloomberg, on the remote line from New Jersey. So, Dave, give us a sense of this trade, the atmospherics around it, and maybe some of the sectors where you're seeing real movement.
It's a pretty broad-based decline at this point, and all the issues with the virus sort of compound other things going on that are dragging down stocks. If you look at the S&P 500, the 8 biggest losses in the index are all banks, and this comes out of the Federal Reserve's decision yesterday to require them to hold the line on dividends and not to buy back shares, at least through the third quarter. So that's one piece of it.
And I was going to say, Jason and I, as soon as that headline crossed and we did some analysis with Yaman Onoran over at Bloomberg News, covers this sector, we knew, even though there were gains yesterday, we knew that they were going to be under pressure today, Dave. You saw it coming.
Absolutely. I mean, you look at the biggest banks, you see they're all down more than 5%. Wells Fargo, lower by 6.5% at the moment. And right behind the banks, you see the social media companies. Unilever came out and said they are going to suspend advertising on Facebook and Twitter through the end of the year. And that investors certainly didn't want to hear that. You've got Facebook at the moment down 6.8%. You've got Twitter down 7.5%. And right around the same point, you've got Nike, whose numbers came out late yesterday and were disappointing for their latest fiscal quarter. Nike shares at the moment down about 7%. So you put all those things together, and then you look at the travel stocks, and they're lower as well. I'll tell you, it's certainly a widespread sort of weakness here.
And let's just build on that, Jason, because that whole idea of Unilever, they are very much thinking about how do you write things in society, right? And they've been taking a lot of initiatives. JP Morgan, a headline just crossing, ditching customers who abuse its workers with racism. Let's bring in Vince Signorella, talk about markets and kind of within this environment.
Hey, how are you? One thing I'd like to point out is, and this is what traders are talking about, but it's, you really can't stand them in front of the steamroller when the virus counts come out. What the traders are starting to try to drill into is looking at the virus counts and then comparing that to hospitalization rates. And they're expecting, of course, the virus count cases to go up as we test more. But what they're looking for is to see if the hospitalization rates keep pace.
Right.
So if they do, then we can say for sure this is a bad sign, because not only are we getting counts, but we're getting an increase in hospitalizations. But if the counts go up and the hospitalizations stay somewhat stagnant, that's actually a good sign. It shows that we're doing the right thing by testing, but that the virus itself is becoming less and less pervasive.
Yeah, no, it's a really interesting point. And we're going to talk with our go-to doc, Dr. Ian Lesbader, coming up in just a few minutes. So, Vince, as we wrap up the week, I mean, every 5 days feels like 15 in this market and in this culture that we're living in some ways, just wrestling with all these big questions. What are traders going to go into the weekend feeling like?
Pretty miserable and probably close to pretty flat. A lot of volumes are down. You can see it right at the open of the market today. And I was watching the way the averages were trading. There was a lot of chop and a lot of looked like gap pricing, so that when somebody was coming in for some kind of a fill at a certain level, they weren't able to get it until they were a bit past their level. So there's a lot of this, and it's been going on all day. There are gaps of liquidity, but by and large, as we head into the summer and people try to cut back on risk, then you're going to see more and more chop, higher volatility, until we get to probably around Labor Day, when we get a clearer picture about the election, and you get everybody back from a summer vacation, and with fingers crossed, perhaps the states will get the virus under control.
All right, Dave, last word to you.
Vince mentioned volume. You're going to get a burst of it in stocks at the close. It's the annual Russell reconstitution. Russell 1000, 2000, all their indexes get their annual overhaul. So look for a few billion shares at the end of the day.
Interesting.
Never a
Very
dull
good
moment.
point. Very good point. All right, Dave Wilson, you'll be back with us in just a bit with your chart of the day. Vince Signorello, thank you so much. Catch Vince on the Global Macro Squawk Desk. Squawk on your Launchpad.
Yeah, great stuff, and really some good context in terms of the markets. You know, we were talking about, we like to go into a show with a theme, Jason, and I think safe to say it's all again all about the virus. You know, companies and industries, they're finding their way through this. I mean, look, we've got an IPO for the second largest supermarket operator in the U.S. That happened. Albertsons, public again. We're going to talk with the CEO. So amid all of this, stuff is happening.
Stuff is absolutely happening. And, you know, the market's opening up a little bit when it comes to IPOs, as you said, maybe not greeting that particular one with open arms, but talking to the CEO, that will be a good marker, I think, for us. One thing I'm looking forward to, you know, sometimes we have wine on the way out of the show. Today, we have a musician that's going to take us back a little bit. We've been having a good time with this.
Oh my God, I've been like spending, don't listen to, my bosses aren't listening, a lot of time on YouTube checking out those old videos. Richard Marx.
Yeah.
He's been in the music industry for 4 decades. He's getting ready for his first ever solo virtual concert. So we're going to talk to him about that.
You could say we're going to be right here waiting for him?
Yeah.
You wanted to say it. I said it so you didn't have to, Carol.
I know. Well done, Jason Kelly.
Thank you.
You know what? There's like a whole generation that are like, I don't know why they think that's so clever.
What is that old man talking about?
Why is that so clever?
Why does she think he's funny? He's not. He's not. Anyway, lots more ahead. It's going to be quite a Friday. It's been quite a week, Lemon. So we'll get to all of that. First, let's get down to D.C. Nancy Lyons is there with World and National Headlines. Hey, Nancy.
Hey, Jason. The number of confirmed new coronavirus cases per day in the U.S. has hit an all-time high of 40,000. That's eclipsing the mark set during the deadliest stretch in late April. And the administration was back with its pandemic briefings today. Vice President Mike Pence was at the podium.
As we see new cases rising, and we're tracking them very carefully, there may be a tendency among the American people to think that we are back to that place that we were 2 months ago, that we're in a time of great losses and great hardship on the American people. The reality is we're in a much better place.
Well, it might be tough to convince those in Texas of that, with the COVID-19 positive test rate up to 11%. Governor Greg Abbott announced he's taking action by closing bars and ordering restaurants to limit capacity to 50%. That takes effect Monday. Austin Mayor Steve Adler expects their hospitals to be overwhelmed by mid-July.
The path we're on right now is the path that right now has us in danger. We need to do something that's different than that. We need our people in our community here to act differently. The status quo will not protect us.
Texas was among the first to let retailers and restaurants open back up for business. There's a standoff in the Red Sea where an abandoned oil tanker could explode or leak its cargo of more than 1 million barrels of crude. Houthi rebels are blocking the UN from inspecting the ship that's moored off the coast of Yemen. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Nancy Lyons.
People love a good story. They like it even better when that story is real.
Is this something strange in the numbers?
Paul Sweeney.
That seems like a big miss to me.
Bonnie Quinn.
New funds getting started in order to take advantage of what might be a moment.
Bloomberg Markets, weekday mornings at 10 Eastern.
If Russia does throw this spanner in the works, what does it do to relations going forward?
On Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com.
How important is that statement there?
Bloomberg, the world is listening.
There are everyday actions to help prevent the spread of respiratory diseases. Wash your hands. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Stay home when you are sick. Cover your cough or sneeze. Clean and disinfect frequently touched objects with household cleaning spray. For more information, visit cdc.gov/COVID-19. This message brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
With COVID-19, so much is unknown.
Is this the worst you've seen?
But we are committed to getting you every piece of information we can as soon as we can.
Tell us about this first big win you have. What is it, 24 million N95 masks?
Fewer unknowns.
Who's winning here? Where is the pressure right now?
That's our goal.
What worries you the most? The time it's going to take for a vaccine?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
The average time a resume spends on an HR manager's desk is 7 seconds, and most of them are tossed aside. Now imagine if one of those resumes belonged to Yasmin, who was
living in a shelter, juggling 3 jobs. I had to be resilient. That's something that you can't teach.
We rely so much on a resume, yet it could never tell the full story of someone who
had to be independent and take initiative, and that's how I handle every project I get.
Discover new ways to develop great talent at gradsoflife.org. Brought to you by Grads of Life and the Ad Council.
It could be a first-timer or a long-timer or a once-in-a-whiler. It could be a little or a lot. It could be the ticket under your fridge magnet. It could be someone with your first name and last and middle. It could be you. This Saturday's £15 million lotto jackpot must be won, or thousands of you will win a share of the jackpot. Play online or on the app. Lotto from the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
How do we control coronavirus now? This is Scott. He's a nurse.
NHS Test and Trace helps stop the spread of the virus in our communities. If you've got symptoms, even mild ones, get a test immediately. Don't leave home for any other reason. If you test positive, we can trace the people you've been in contact with and contain the virus. So get tested and protect each other.
To get a test, go to nhs.uk/coronavirus or call 119. Stay alert. Control the virus. Save lives.
Get your cook on with Asda. With rollbacks on Hellman's Real Mayonnaise, 705 grams was £2.75, now £2. And a 6-pack of Warburton Sandwich Thins was £1, now 75p. Wham bam, add your lunchtime ham. Find thousands of rollbacks across our stores. Asda. Selected stores and lines subject to availability. Offers end 1st of July.
Enjoy peace of mind with Ford. Relax and think about 3 months deferred payment on a new vehicle. Visualize an additional 3 months cashback. Breathe deeply and let 0% APR representative on selected vehicles wash over you. That's peace of mind from Ford. Current promotion ends 30th of June. Search Ford Peace of Mind for details.
Only available with Ford credit on selected finance plans. Exclusions and deposit restrictions may apply.
Buckle up, race fans.
NASCAR is back in the driver's seat.
And you can cut straight to the action here.
With the Performance Racing Network on TuneIn, you can hear PRN's live coverage of some of this year's top events.
As NASCAR's top drivers, Kevin Harvick,
Clint Boyer, and more get back on the track.
Search Performance Racing Network to listen and see upcoming races.
This is Mike Golick from ESPN's Golick and Wingo. Every morning, Trey Wingo, my son, and I sit down to discuss all the news, drama, and highlights spinning the sports world that day. And with TuneIn, you can hear us whenever and wherever you go. Just search Golick and Wingo to start listening today.
Looking to freshen up your listening on TuneIn? Head to the homepage to discover something new. There you'll see custom recommendations based on your listening habits, along with new episodes of shows you've enjoyed in the past. Uncover your next audio obsession on the homepage.
Are you ready for the realest first-hand take of what's happening in the NBA? On their podcast, All the Smoke, former NBA players Matt Barnes and Steven Jackson bring their fiery intensity to the mic, dishing on the latest news and drama from on and off the court without boundaries.
Half man, half amazing. My friend, our brother, Vince Carter, man, welcome to the show.
Yo, what's up, man?
What's up, my brother?
Man,
Search All the Smoke on TuneIn to listen.
You love TuneIn for live-breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellett. The selling continues this Friday. 2-week low for the U.S. stock market. Treasuries higher as a resurgence in new virus infections began halting progress on reopening the U.S. economy. The S&P's down 60 now. That is a drop of 2%. The Dow down 642, down 2.5%. NASDAQ is down 193, a drop now of 1.9%. We are on track for a losing week for the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ. 10 years up 14.30 seconds, yield 0.63%. Gold up 0.2%, 17.67 the ounce. Ham West Texas Intermediate crude down 1%, 38.34 a barrel. I'm Charlie Pellett. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
We need to protect the most vulnerable, and we want a message going out to younger Americans, particularly those along the Sun Belt, in these counties where we see new cases on the rise, positivity on the rise, to know that we need them to do their part.
And of course, that was Vice President Mike Pence just moments ago giving an update at the White House. The White House Coronavirus Task Force, it is back, and it held a briefing, which, as we've been saying, feels like the rest of the country is back in March, New York, right? Back in March, Jason. That's what it feels like. So let's get into where we are, because Texas is closing bars. They are coping with a record number of new cases really around the country is what we're seeing. So let's get into it with Dr. Ian Lustbader, Clinical Associate Professor of Medicine at NYU Langone Medical Center, on the phone from New York City. I'm kind of jumbled because I'm trying to keep track, to be quite honest, Ian, of all the headlines that have come down just on this Friday alone. Florida's governor says alcohol is suspended at bars. So how do you make sense of kind of where we are? Or is the rest of the country kind of where New York was back in March?
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good analysis. Happy Friday, Carol and Jason, by the way, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, and by the way, Jason, I've been in the office every day since January, so it is a shock, but some of us have been slogging through it.
I know, and I have to say, Ian, before you answer, I have renewed admiration for everybody who has been going in, our team included, just given what it feels like, and I know it feels better than it did 2 months ago. So I really, it's remarkable what you guys have done dealing with this, and I think that's one of the reasons, if I may editorialize for a second, why I think Carol and I are a little upset seeing what's going on in the rest of the country, given everything we know from talking to friends and colleagues like you. You've been doing and been through.
Right. So I think the task force, like you, is concerned about the dramatic, really spike in cases across the Sun Belt, and they all, Vice President Pence and Dr. Birx and Fauci, I think, really had sort of a fairly uniform expression of concern, which is that we're really having this paradigm shift from previously just testing people who seem to have symptoms or being ill to really asymptomatic testing now. And as that's happening, we're really seeing a spike in the number of cases. And I think the press conference today was really focused on enlisting young people to really have more social responsibility. As much as they want to go out, as everyone wants to go out and have fun, there really is a social responsibility to continue to flatten the curve, which I think the northeastern states did, reasonably well. It certainly is not zero by any means, but it certainly did flatten the cases. And part of that is to prevent this hospital surge,
right,
where you overwhelm the ability of the hospitals to take care of people. You may not necessarily reduce the total number of cases. We don't have medications or a vaccine to prevent cases, but even if you slow the spread, you're able to kind of protect hospitals so that when, God forbid, when people need ventilators or need access, that's available. And I think that was their emphasis today, and I think it makes a lot of sense because we are seeing such a spike in cases. And part of that are asymptomatic young people, as they say, under 40, under 35, who are carrying and transmitting COVID-19, SARS-CoV-2, and feel perfectly fine. And that really is the conundrum. That's the challenge.
I have to say, we kind of had a little bit of a run-in this weekend with a younger individual who was not wearing a mask, and repeatedly kind of reminding, as we were kind of out and about, in a social situation. And it's just interesting, and I think they make a good point. I do also want to bring up something our Vince Signorella, Dr. Lustbader, brought up at the top of our show. What are the numbers that we really need to focus? Is it cases? Is it hospitalizations? Like, what is it that either tells us we're getting back to where we were in New York in March, or it's a little bit different and maybe perhaps a little better, or, I don't know how you quantify it or qualify it.
Right. Well, as Dr. Fauci said, this is a protean disease, and he's never seen it, and we've never seen it. A disease where you can have, fortunately, the majority of people, it seems, with really minimal or asymptomatic disease, all the way to life-threatening disease, where people die, and before that, they're a month or two on a respirator. So it is very hard to process. And somewhat hard to predict which people will crash and burn and which people will have very mild cases. And because of this, we have to be extra cautious in trying to prevent that, because although we know risk factors and they outline that type 1 diabetes, obesity, hypertension, lung disease, age, we're still seeing young people who get sick, and certainly in New York, we've seen young people who unfortunately die. So we don't really have the full picture, and therefore everyone has to really be on much more guard. Hopefully, go back to work cautiously. It's a real balancing act between damaging an economy and having some potential risk to your population. That's a tough needle to thread, and that's really what everyone is trying to grapple with, because we don't have recent history of this. 1918 was a long time ago, and they didn't have these issues.
All right, we're going to continue our conversation with Dr. Ian Lustbader, giving us some great context about where we are in the virus. And I think probably alongside with us, watching this with a little bit of caution and I dare say, I don't want to put words in his mouth, maybe a little frustration of, what's going on in the rest of the world, because we have lived this, we know, and he's lived it far, far more intimately than we have, Carol, and really seen people suffering from this disease.
And you really would hope that, people have learned from what, unfortunately, we had to go through here in the New York metro area in particular, and you would hope that it would not be as bad, or at least headed in that direction. So I guess time will tell, Jason, but it certainly is jarring, the tone that we are feeling really throughout the week, to be quite honest, and then, of course, to see that task force back. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week on Bloomberg Radio.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. The list of companies pulling their ads from social media continues to grow. Unilever is the latest, dropping its ads from Facebook and Twitter for the rest of the year. It cites hate speech and polarized politics. Facebook and Twitter shares are down about 7% on the news. Fears of a coronavirus resurgence are sending the broad market lower. The Dow Industrials are down 610, the S&P 500 down 57, the Nasdaq down 179. Next week will be critical for Boeing 737 MAX. The grounded jet will be put through its paces in a series of test flights Sources say the FAA has reviewed Boeing's safety analysis of fixes made to the jet and is comfortable taking the next step. Albertsons failed to take off today in its Wall Street debut. The supermarket company is down more than 1% after its initial public offering was priced at a lower than expected $16 a share last night. Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Radio.
Sweet strawberry icing. You're in Goodwill, and just past that vintage denim jacket you spot miniature donut earrings. You lean in. That's the scent of shopping success. Because at Goodwill, every item you buy funds local job training and more. So bring home those donut earrings and bring home so much good to your community. Goodwill. Bring good home. Brought to you by Goodwill and the Ad Council.
You're living in a world built on science, political and economic.
You've got to believe the labour market gets hit.
Computer and medical.
Clarify where we are on a test.
It all makes a difference.
What do you think needs to happen in terms of governmental response?
And it's all here.
He expects the virus to peak quite a long time from now.
Get your science straight.
The hand washing campaign, is this actually a good strategy?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
At Honda, we've never looked to other car companies for inspiration. No, it's not a matter of an inflated ego. We just prefer listening to what people really need. For example, the new Honda Jazz Hybrid doesn't have the expected 6 airbags. It has 10, including one that prevents the driver and passenger from colliding with each other. And because we also listen to our conscience, all our safety features come as standard. No charge. Honda, the power of dreams.
And action!
I was offered one.
Cut. That's not on the script.
I was offered one. Get in.
Ladies and gentlemen, I was offered one.
Come, boy. I was offered one. Don't take our word for it. 9 out of 10 people said they were offered a great value deal with O2. Get yours today, in-store, online, or by phone.
I was offered one too. O2 Retail Exit Survey 309 of 348 agreed with the statement. O2 offered me a great value deal. For full verification, see o2.co.uk/terms.
Tuesdays at KFC gonna get you like, wow, pow, chow, kapow. Get down right now. If you know how, then take a bow. Because this deal's gonna raise a brow. Get 9 pieces of original recipe chicken for an eye-popping $5.99. What the... Every Tuesday at KFC. Participating restaurants ends 18th of August 2020. Tuesdays only, subject to availability, not available online.
Should your kids go back to school? Ask Andrea. She's a teacher.
We're doing everything we can to keep the children safe and happy at school, which is why it's great that more of those who can are coming back. Not only for their education, but for their overall well-being too. It gives them a routine, helps develop their social skills, and they get to see their friends too.
If your child is eligible, they should return to school. The government is working towards getting all pupils back in September. Stay alert. Control the virus. Save lives.
Formula One is back.
F1 is back on Sky Sports.
It's lights out, and away we go.
And there's never been a season like this before.
How was that fast?
No one knows where this road leads, but it's going to be a hell of a ride.
Down the inside, no, he can't stop into each other.
Are you ready?
Brilliant madness. An absolutely perfect race.
Watch every race live. Upgrade to Sky Sports F1 today. Go to sky.com/F1 for details.
Where do sports, culture, and basketball nostalgia collide? On their podcast, Knuckleheads, NBA veterans Quentin Richardson and Darius Miles sit down with athletes, musicians, and entertainers to get brutally honest, totally unguarded conversations about everything from current events to untold stories from the golden era of sports.
Shaquille O'Neal. You know that, right? I tried to tip dunk off the free throw line one time.
Search Knuckleheads on TuneIn to listen.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
This is Mike Golic Jr. from ESPN's Golic and Wingo. Every morning, Wingo, Dad, and I sit down and discuss all the news, drama, and highlights spinning the sports world that day. And with TuneIn, you can hear us whenever and wherever you go. Just search Golic and Wingo to start listening today.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
Did you know that with TuneIn's local radio feature, you can stream live FM and AM stations broadcasting in your area? Discover local news, talk, and music stations. Navigate to the local radio section under Browse to listen locally on TuneIn.
1130 to Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston, Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco, Bloomberg 960 to the country, Sirius XM Channel 119, and around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
Yes, indeed, everyone. Bloomberg Business Week on this Friday. We're going to get back to our conversation about the latest on the virus, where we are across the country. We're going to stay with our conversation with Dr. Ian Lustbader over at NYU Langone. But first up, back to your top business stories. And here is once again, Charlie Pelley.
All right, I thank you very much. Lows of the day right now for the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ. A decline for U.S. stocks. In fact, we're at a two-week low. Treasuries higher as a resurgence in new virus infections began halting progress on reopening across the economy. S&P's down 64 right now at 3,019, down 2.1%. On track for a losing week for the S&P. The Dow now lower by 678 points, down 2.6%, and NASDAQ is down 207, a decline there of 2.1%. 10-years up 14.30 seconds with a yield of 0.63%. Gold up 0.2%, 17.66 the ounce. And West Texas Intermediate crude down 0.9%, 38.36 a barrel. Investors are concerned that a second wave of the pandemic could force policymakers to reverse plans to reopen the economy. Dr. Andrew Pekosh is a professor of molecular microbiology and immunology at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. He was interviewed this morning on Bloomberg Television.
We expect to see some of the more serious implications of this surge in cases in the next week or two. And public health interventions take a good 2 weeks before they come into play and show an effect on these curves. So the longer we delay acting now, the longer we're going to see this surge of cases continue, and the harder it's going to be to get this down to manageable levels again.
The Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health is supported by Michael R. Bloomberg, founder of Bloomberg LP and Bloomberg Philanthropies. Big banks lower this afternoon after the Federal Reserve capped dividends and banned buybacks through September. J.P. Morgan Chase down 5.3%, Citigroup down 5.4%, Bank of America down 6.1%, Wells Fargo is down now by 6.7%. After earnings, Nike shares down by 7%. I'm Charlie Pellett. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Jason Kelly and Carol Masser here with you. We're back with Dr. Ian Lustbader, Clinical Associate Professor of Medicine for NYU's Langone Medical Center, on the phone from New York City. So, Ian, I have to ask you, we were a little bit doom and gloom, maybe rightly so, about the rest of the country, but we're looking at phase 3 potentially. It's scheduled for July 6th in New York City. How are you feeling about that, especially as you see what's going on in the rest of the country?
I'm optimistic. I do think, from what I see, most people are wearing masks and social distancing. We're seeing that in our waiting room. Hopefully businesses have had time to prepare and figure out ways to bring people back. It's a challenge. We really don't know what will happen. It looks as if, at least in the Northeast, people will be able to return using good judgment, and that's not to disparage people perhaps in the Sun Belt who felt more comfortable because they really were unaware of the number of cases. We are probably only diagnosing, 1 in 5 or 1 in 10% of cases. So the total number is almost, you have to think of this perhaps as 10 times more. We have 2.5 million cases. Probably there are 25 million people who are infected, fortunately most asymptomatic. Right. It may be less than that, but certainly we can't be shocked if those numbers grow. And I think people have been feeling very confident. There's more treatment. You hear less about deaths, but even though many of these things like convalescent plasma and dexamethasone, remdesivir, those seem to help a bit, but by no means are they cures. They are reducing the death rate 20%, 30%, but by no means are we out of the woods. But I do. But think,
Ian, let me ask you a question just on that exact point. So if it's 10 times, or if it's 20 million versus 2 million, should that make us feel better?
Well, I think it should make us feel better as we see the number of cases going up. And that goes back to your question, what are we going to measure? Or what are we going to be concerned about?
Yeah.
I think we are going to see more cases going up. And that's why the number of hospitalizations and why the death rate or case fatality rate may be somewhat more useful.
Right.
But I put that number out, and that's publicly available, just so that we're not shocked at seeing more and more cases. But it is a reminder that we do need to, again, have that community involvement, as Dr. Fauci said, with young people being very aware, because they're the main kind of petri dish at this point. They're a big reservoir of asymptomatic disease. When we first started out, we were only testing sick people. Now we really have the ability, fortunately, to test asymptomatic people. So I think we should go through with phase 3. We do have more testing available. We're seeing in New York at least a high seroprevalence rate, probably 20, maybe even 30%. So that's
meaning antibodies, right?
Antibodies, exactly. And we think those are preventive antibodies. How long they will last, how long they'll prevent recurrence, we don't really know. Again, will the virus mutate in a second wave or in the fall? But certainly, I think based on what we are seeing now, cautiously going back makes sense here. But this is very regional. Obviously, there are areas where it's still rising dramatically.
So I'm just thinking about our audience listening to this and how the week's been and the task force came out. So, Ian, is it just a case if we start to see hospitalizations go up a lot, is that when we all have to say, well, wait a minute, we've really got to slow this down? Is that the number that we've got to be kind of glued to?
I think so. And, there's always that delay, right? So as you're diagnosing cases, hospitalizations and sadly deaths will be delayed 2, 3, 4 weeks down the line. So we haven't really seen that surge in hospitalizations because you're just seeing cases diagnosed now. So there will be a delay, and that in some ways gives the localities time to prepare. But many community hospitals really don't have the resources if there's really a big surge, and that was the whole rationale to try and, flatten the curve. I don't want to say it's too late, but there may be areas where that we're not as careful, and we're seeing more cases, and I think we have to expect more hospitalizations and sadly more deaths in the next few weeks, because that's just the kind of how the numbers go in this scenario.
Yeah, it's a tricky time, to say the least, and a worrisome time, I think, as well. All right, Dr. Ian Lustbader, it's always good to end up the week with you, because I feel like I go into the weekend smarter, knowing what I should be thinking about. And, candidly, when people from a social distance ask me what I think is going on, I just quote Dr. Ian Lustbader.
No, I do. I really feel like we take everything that's been going on in the week, and this day was full of so much, and we just make sense out of all of it. So, I really always appreciate he being one of our go-to voices when it comes to the virus. All right, coming up next, we're going to talk about an IPO. It's, I think, the second IPO by a food firm in the past year on U.S. exchanges. So,
and a window into the economy in many ways. A window into the markets, obviously, and going public, but also what he's seeing. We're going to have the CEO of Albertsons, the newly public grocery chain, with us in just a minute.
All right, first up, let's get back to World of National News headlines and back on over to Nancy Lyons in our D.C. studio. Hi, Nance.
Hey, Carol. Pandemic briefings are back. Vice President Mike Pence is trying to paint a reassuring picture of a surge in COVID-19 cases in the country, saying the outbreaks are concentrated in a small number of areas, and most of those who fall ill are younger.
Roughly half of the new cases are Americans under the age of 35, which is, at a certain level, very encouraging news, as the experts tell us. Because as we know so far in this pandemic, that younger Americans are less susceptible to serious outcomes of the coronavirus.
Well, government and health officials are imploring people to wear masks with cases now up to record levels. Ronald Klain was President Obama's Ebola czar and says wearing a mask is not an infringement on freedoms.
We need to persuade people to wear masks. It's like drunk driving. I hear people say, it's my body, it's my choice. Well, it's not your body, your choice to get loaded up on liquor and get in a car and put other people at risk.
The number of confirmed new coronavirus cases per day in the country has hit an all-time high of 40,000. That's higher than one of the deadliest stretches last April. Well, a spacewalking astronaut has added to the millions of pieces of junk orbiting the Earth. The commander of the International Space Station, Chris Cassidy, had barely exited the hatch today when he reported his left wrist mirror had floated away. Mission Control says the lost mirror poses no risk to either the spacewalk or the space station. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Nancy Lyons.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
For the Jewish Communal Fund, Noel Spiegel, former senior partner with Deloitte & Touche and past JCF president, discusses the advantages of a donor-advised fund over a private foundation.
There's a lot involved in having a private foundation. You need to engage attorneys, you need to engage accountants, file tax returns. At JCF, all of that is done for you. You don't have to get involved in anything other than making your contribution to your fund and then determining which grants that you want to make.
A JCF fund may be opened with a minimum $5,000 contribution of cash or appreciated securities and can be used as an alternative to or together with a private foundation.
If you have a foundation, you have to list all of the contributions that you made. Potentially anybody, because the information is public, can find out exactly which organizations a foundation has made charitable contributions to.
Let JCF simplify your philanthropy and protect your privacy. Learn more about JCF's private client group at jcfny.org.
Market upheaval.
Picture this. Small businesses on eBay are
ploughing on, boxing up goods and rolling them out, shipping kettles,
instruments to kids,
art for walls,
treats to pets, shorts for sunny weekends,
to brighten up one British home at a time.
Thousands of small businesses on eBay are helping to keep the nation going. They are individually brilliant, stronger as one. Buy, sell, eBay.
If you want to find out what the best laptop is for all those video conferences with your colleagues while sitting at your makeshift desk, you could ask a machine, or someone called Mac, or Luth, or Ange, or one of our other tech experts on Shop Live, Curry's PC World's online video call experience.
Hi, you're talking to Mackenzie on Shop Live.
Isn't it nice to get advice from another human being? They're just a click away. Curry's PC World. Talk to our tech experts online with Shop Live.
You always say the best thing you ever did was join up. I bet you don't get the same experiences in Civvy Street. Remember those incredible family adventures? And that feeling of being part of something special. We'd love to have you back. Go on, feel the pride again. Search RAF Rejoiners.
It could be a first-timer, or a long-timer, or a once-in-a-whiler. It could be a little or a lot. It could be the ticket under your fridge magnet. It could be someone with your first name and last and middle. It could be you. This Saturday's £15 million lotto jackpot must be won, or thousands of you will win a share of the jackpot. Play online or on the app. Lotto from the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
When the world stopped, people in our local communities didn't. At the Co-op, we want to say thank you to all the local heroes. Daksha wanted to help the NHS, so she and her husband Paresh cooked 50 meals for a hospital in Harrow. But they didn't stop there. They've set up the Community Response Kitchen, delivering to hospitals, schools and homeless shelters across London. Now they're delivering between 1,000 and 3,000 meals every day, and they've achieved all this with no funding, just the support of local businesses and local people. To Daksha and Paresh and all the local heroes that keep our communities going, the Co-op says thank you.
With the shift to remote working, video conferencing has become the new normal to keep your business running. But is it reliable and secure? Cisco WebEx is committed to the highest security standards and already trusted by both small businesses and many of the world's largest organizations. Call, message and meet securely with Cisco WebEx. Sign up at cisco.uk/work-from-home. When secure remote work is critical, WebEx is essential.
Hi, I'm an ad for Voxy, the mobile network with endless social media that doesn't eat your data. And I'm here to tell you that summer is on after all. Start that side hustle you've been talking about forever. Or throw a festival in your back garden and live stream it to the world. What are you waiting for? Stay connected, stay endless with Voxy, the mobile network with endless social media. Get 6 gig of data for £10 a month. No contract, cancel anytime. Voice and video calls excluded from endless social apps. Some general data required. 30-day rolling plan, 25 gigabyte roaming. Fair use and terms apply.
Enjoy peace of mind with Ford. Relax and think about 3 months deferred payment on a new vehicle. Visualize an additional 3 months cash back. Breathe deeply and let 0% APR representative on selected vehicles wash over you. That's peace of mind from Ford. Current promotion ends 30th of June. Search Ford Peace of Mind for details.
Only available with Ford credit on selected finance plans. Exclusions and deposit restrictions may apply.
Headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellett. Steep losses for the U.S. stock market. Lows of the day right now with the S&P down 73. That is a drop of 2.4%. The Dow is down 750, a drop of 2.9%. NASDAQ is down 2.3%. Stocks are declining. Treasuries higher as a resurgence in new virus infections begins halting progress on reopening the U.S. economy. And advertiser defections have sent Facebook to its biggest drop since March, extending the market's decline. Facebook shares now down by 7.4%. S&P down 73, lower by 2.4%. 10-year up 15.30 seconds with a yield of 0.63%. Gold up $3.60 the ounce, up 0.2%, 17.67. West Texas Intermediate crude down 1%, 38.33 a barrel. I'm Charlie Pellett. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. So as we mentioned earlier, we did have an IPO today. America's second largest supermarket operator, Albertson, is once again a public company. And the stock right now trading at $15.70 a share. That's below its $16 a share IPO price. Let's get into it with the company's president and CEO, Vivek Sankaran. He joins us on the phone from Boise, Idaho. Vivek, so nice to have you here with us. Congratulations. It wasn't an easy necessarily IPO to do, considering kind of the market backdrop and just kind of the world at large.
Oh, Carol, you're right. It's it's so hard to predict what happens to the market ever. But we as a company, we've been so ready, preparing the company, strengthening it for this day. We feel so confident about what we're going to do in the future.
So, Vivek, talk to us about the world we're living in right now, even outside of the financial markets. When it comes to your stores, you've obviously had to do some retrofitting, some remodeling like everyone else has had to do. Where are you in that process?
So we started out very early in February and March, plexiglass, decals, new cleaning procedures, one-way aisles, etc. One of the things we've learned is you can never stop innovating on that front, right? You can never get complacent, never stop innovating, and we continue to look for new ideas. Sometimes it's a new technology that might count the number of people coming into a store and exiting a store. Sometimes it's about new thermoscan reading temperatures as people come into our factories. So we're always innovating.
So what do you do with something like a salad and soup bar? Do you just get rid of it?
Yeah, for now we have, right? It's what we do instead. Or you were able to go to a salad bar and make your own salad, or pick the half a dozen chicken wings you wanted. Now we package it and provide it. We still provide it for our customers, and customers still want it. They can't customize it like they did before.
Right.
It'll come over time, but I don't think it's the right time yet.
So, Vivek, I think if I've got my numbers right, only about a quarter of your stores feature online order pickup, well below many of your peers. So how do you play catch up with your rivals, especially when it comes to e-commerce? Because folks have had to do it because of the shutdown. And a lot of people are saying, even those who hadn't done it before, I like it, and are probably going to continue in the future. So how do you play catch up?
You're so right. We were building it. This last few months have been an incredible catalyst for us to go even faster. And the fact that we don't have it in so much of our footprint is so much upside for us. I can tell you this, though. Every time we open it in a new store, we get a whole set of new customers starting to shop with us. And the customers who are already shopping with us shop even more. And I think it's because we provide such a fabulous fresh assortment and a more complete assortment than many. So I just think customers say, I've got a great store, and I now have the convenience of omni-channel with it.
So in terms of catching up, is it just because you guys are going to focus on it and just ramp up your efforts to catch up, or what?
Yes, that is. And we're also catching up in different ways. You know, we've got new technologies that we're putting in place that can enable faster picking in stores. So we're doing it in different ways, and we're adapting to some new stuff that's coming onto the market.
And so when you think about the competitive landscape, Vivek, even beyond e-commerce, from a pricing perspective, what do you see in terms of pressure from some of the, lower price or the so-called hard discount formats? I'm thinking about like Aldi and others, and even with the dollar stores who are pushing deeper into grocery. How do you combat that side of the equation?
Yeah, the way I see it is competition is a wonderful thing. It keeps us all sharper. We learn from things. We learn from them all the time. And we play the game a little differently, right? You can go to some of those stores and you won't get the full assortment you want. You come to our store, you get the full assortment you want. And the great thing about our country is different customers want different choices. And so the key is to find a way to compete that's different and right for our customer. And we believe we do that very well.
So Vivek, I do wonder, so you guys are now, as we said at the top, a publicly held company trading on the New York Stock Exchange. This is after 14 years of private ownership by Cerberus Capital. I do wonder, though, are you disappointed with the IPO? $16 was below an expected range. There was talk of, you guys raising more than $1 billion in this IPO. Are you disappointed?
Carol, we are actually elated that we could conduct an IPO in one of the most difficult environments we have all seen in our lifetimes, in so many different ways, and that so many investors had confidence to put their money with us. And we are always long-term oriented. You said it. Our investors have been with us since 2006. Okay, and so it's a long-term orientation, and that's what we have every day here.
And so, Vivek, when you think about your employees, too, and the workforce, what a change it has been from an incredibly tight labor market that we had earlier in the year to record unemployment now. Tell us about your workforce and how you see that changing, growing, shrinking in the short and midterm.
Yeah, we've had to add so many people to our stores, our distribution centers, our omni-channel business. So in the first few months, we recruited more than 50,000 people. We had a base of 270,000 people. Our workforce, there's so many who've been with us for so long and who are so service-oriented and service-centric. That we celebrate our workforce, and we've spent a lot of time keeping them safe, making sure they're paid right, especially through this crisis. And we think this will continue for a while, that we'll need this level of workforce. And I don't know how things change, so hard to predict it. But we're on a good trend on that front.
So I've got to just quickly ask you, what's going to be the relationship with Cerberus going forward? They still have a sizable stake in you guys, and you still have a fair amount of debt. I think it was $8.7 billion at the end of the last fiscal year. How do you get rid of it? And just got about a minute left.
Yes, it's a lot lower now. It's only 2.5 times our EBITDA, a little shy of $7 billion. And we recognize that Cerberus and 4 other investors who've been with us, they'll continue to stay with us. They've been fabulous. They've invested in this company to make it stronger, and we're delighted that they continue to stay with us.
All right, we're going to leave it there. Vivek Sankaran, thank you so much. President and CEO of Albertsons, newly public, certainly a company to watch. Can I say one personal thing, Carol, about Albertsons?
Please.
They own the Randall's grocery store chain. My first job in Houston, Texas. The Randall's flagship. If Debbie Kelly is listening, she would remember. Did you check out?
Were you a stock boy?
I was a checkout. You know what? I wanted to be because it was a fancy grocery store in the neighborhood where we lived in Houston, and so you took people's groceries out to the car, and even though it was Houston and it was hot as all get out, that was the job you wanted because you got tips. I couldn't get one of those jobs. Those were all taken, so I was a cashier instead. Pinstriped apron.
It's like, would you like your eggs on the bottom?
Yeah, exactly. But, you had to worry about, your speed and all that.
All right, for those of you listening in New York, D.C., and San Francisco, watching on YouTube, Bloomberg Business Week continues. If you're listening on Bloomberg 106.1 in Boston, Bay State Business is coming up next. Stick around, though. Business Week, we've got the day's economic news right here on Bloomberg Radio.
At Honda, we believe in our ears. Listening can help solve some of life's biggest conundrums. For example, if a car breaks down and there's no one around to hear it, does it make a sound? The answer is yes. The new Jazz Hybrid will pinpoint your location automatically and send for help at the tap of a button. And with its personal assistant, you can find the answers to other conundrums like, where is a good vegan gluten-free pizza place with free parking? The new Honda Jazz. Hybrid and connected. Honda. The power of dreams. Connectivity subscription available on selected grades.
My name is Danya. I moved to Manchester in 2010. I came from Afghanistan. The first school day was a bit tough. I had no friends, couldn't speak English, and felt a bit left out. My high school teacher was very supportive. She matched me up with friends that spoke the same language as me. Having friends gave me a lot of confidence. I felt like I'm not being left out.
Teaching. Every lesson shapes a life. Get free one-to-one support with our teacher training advisors to get one step closer to the classroom. Subject to eligibility. Search Get Into Teaching.
It could be a first-timer or a long-timer or a once-in-a-whiler. It could be a little or a lot. It could be the ticket under your fridge magnet. It could be someone with your first name and last and middle. It could be you. This Saturday's £15 million Lotto jackpot must be won, or thousands of you will win a share of the jackpot. Play online or on the app. Lotto from the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
Get your cook on with Asda. With rollbacks on Hellman's Real Mayonnaise, 705 grams was £2.75, now £2. And a 6-pack of Warburton Sandwich Thins was £1, now 75p. Wham bam, add your lunchtime ham. Find thousands of rollbacks across our stores. Asda. Selected stores and lines subject to availability. Offers end 1st of July.
There's lots to discover when you join Tesco Mobile, like our big deals on big data SIMs, including our 8 gig SIM for just £10 a month. You'll also find great service with 99% UK network coverage. Visit us in store or search Tesco Mobile. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Ends 26th of the 7th, 12-month contract and unlock 4G enabled phone required. Phased policy applies 99% 4G population coverage indoors and outdoors across UK. Charges and terms at tescomobile.com/terms.
Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. We move into the final hour of trading with the Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ at or near session lows. It is going to be a losing week. S&P lower now by 68 points, down 2.2%. The Dow is down 694. That is a drop of 2.7%. NASDAQ down 220, a decline of 2.2%. The 10-year up 15.30 seconds with a yield of 0.63%. Stocks are declining as a resurgence in new virus infections begin begins halting progress on reopening the U.S. economy. As for the surge in coronavirus cases and what it means, Christina Hooper is Chief Global Market Strategist at Invesco Advisors, and she was interviewed this morning on Bloomberg Television.
We continue to see green shoots around the country. The question becomes, though, how much longer we see green shoots. I know there's a commitment on the part of a number of governors to not reimpose lockdowns, but what we're seeing is companies beginning to impose their own lockdowns, like Apple. And we could also see consumers impose their own lockdowns if they begin to fear the environment.
Gold is up 0.2%, $17.67 the ounce. Crude West Texas Intermediate down 1%, now $38.34 a barrel. Unilever says it will halt ads on Facebook and Twitter for the rest of the year, citing hate speech and polarized politics as key reasons for its decision. Facebook shares down 7.3%. Twitter shares, they're tumbling now by 7.8%. Kanye West's Yeezy fashion label is coming to Gap. The rapper and designer is teaming with Gap on a new line of apparel for men, women, and kids called Yeezy Gap. Shares of Gap, based in San Francisco, they're surging right now by 18.4%. So again, recapping, it is a down Friday here, again on track for a losing week. Right now, the S&P on the week down 2.5%. Right now, the S&P is down 65, lower by 2.1%. The Dow recapping down 2.6%. NASDAQ is down 2.1%, down 209 points. NASDAQ now at 98.07. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Masser and Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
All right, let's do a little Business Week economics, shall we?
Do you know, though, Gap was up more than 40%? I mean, it's still up about 20%, but it's halved some of that. Sorry. I was just listening to Charlie. That's amazing.
Listen, not to bring it all back to my obvious theme of the week, but you get a big voice on something, and there are a few bigger than Kanye, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a big deal.
It's huge.
Especially at this moment, right?
Totally. And could be transformational if you think about a brand like the Gap. Sorry, I digress, but let's talk economics. It all goes back together.
Let's get to the Kanye of the senior U.S. economist world, Yelena Shalecheva for Bloomberg Economics. I'm sure she's on the phone from Long Island rolling her eyes at me right now. But Yelena, I mean, we do think a lot about the consumer at this moment. Retailers have struggled. Maybe, Kanye can help out the Gap. But how are consumers feeling? Because it's been a rough few months.
Well, consumers are feeling eager to go back and spend some money if they have those funds to spend. So the latest personal income and spending report showed that consumer spending rebounded all across the different categories. It was stronger for goods, but slightly weaker for services. But the problem is that wage income continues to lag, and it is significantly below the levels that we saw before the crisis erupted. So what that means is that next week, both Secretary Mnuchin and Chair Jerome Powell will have to favor more policy support when they testify before Congress.
So Americans need more income, basically, right, in this shutdown. There are folks that are not getting it, and when it runs out, we've got to make sure that continues, essentially.
That is correct. All the good stuff, all the good reports that we have received so far, in terms of the jobs report for May, in terms of spending data, that was predicated on policy support, fiscal policy support, augmented jobless benefits, and also the PPP program that supports companies and enables them to keep workers on paychecks. So when that expires and we are approaching that cliff, what happens is very much in question, and that probably means that we're going to see another double dip in spending if it does expire.
Is the cutoff late July? Is that what it is?
The cutoff rate for the augmented unemployment benefits is the end of July. That is correct. Yes.
Okay.
And you just wonder how that's all going to figure into what we're seeing now from a shutdown perspective, and if more states have to go the way of Texas and kind of reverse some of the reopening, do you see more workers? I mean, does this mean ultimately, Elena, that more stimulus is going to need to come in either from a fiscal or a monetary perspective, from your perspective?
Unfortunately, yes. I think the deficits will have to get wider, and more policy support will be needed until the economy is on track for the recovery on its own. I think it will be interesting to see the jobs report next week, because it will be in some sort of a sweet spot. It will cover the period before all this reacceleration in COVID cases happened, and it will also reflect ongoing PPP support as companies continue to keep their workers on payroll. So in some sense, this jobs report is always important, right? But this particular report for June may be a little bit outdated by now, as we see all this reacceleration in COVID cases.
Yelena, I don't know what kind of virtual, gatherings you guys do on the Bloomberg Economics team, and I know on our side, we
a regular one.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm curious. Like today, we know the tone has been a little bit different this week in terms of the virus cases, moving up around the country. But even this morning with the task force update, it really felt like we were seeing, what New York went through around the country. We're seeing that now. And I do wonder, when you guys have your conversations and you see what's going on, like this morning, do you start to say, hey guys, we need to maybe rethink our economic projections as a team? I just wonder if the tone of your conversations with your team has changed.
In our latest economic outlook update, we actually incorporated reacceleration in COVID cases into our baseline scenario. That's why we kind of see how the economic outlook evolves as an inverted Nike swoosh, I would say. So, following an initial rebound, we see deceleration in economic growth going into the end of the year, and that incorporates that kind of a mild resurgence in cases. I hope it's just not stronger than that.
Interesting. All right. Well, thank you so much, Yelena. Yelena Shalechev, senior U.S. economist for Bloomberg Economics, joining us on the phone. Have a great weekend there in Long Island. It's not a pretty picture, Carol.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting how you said you're feeling the stress of it, right?
Yeah, I am. I think because maybe it's because I did go back into the city, and so I'm sort of feeling, I'm missing certain elements of that. Obviously liking certain elements of what we're doing here, and I think, owing to our team largely, we've been very successful in sort of doing all of this. But it took me back to an earlier time and all the things that we're not doing in many ways, and all the things that we can't do. And I totally understand the need for that reason to get back, but at the same time to have sacrificed everything that's been sacrificed. And listen, you and I are incredibly fortunate to work for a company. We still have jobs, and
we say
we're
it
not,
over and over,
and we say it all the time. But to think about what's happening out there and to think about the fact that we may reverse is really troubling. It really bothers me.
Right. We've committed so much to being home for almost 4 months here, and then to slide back. I can't even kind of get my head around it, because I just want to see it all move forward.
Because we also know how connected we are as a country, and so it's not like, well, I live here and they live there. It's much more complicated than that.
State lines aren't real borders, just going to say.
Virus knows no borders.
Exactly. All right, let's get back to World and National News headlines. Let's check in once again with Nancy Lyons in our D.C. studio. Hi, Nance.
Hey, Carol. The White House Coronavirus Task Force has addressed the rise in coronavirus cases. 40,000 new cases reported in one day, concentrated in a quarter of the states. Bloomberg's Irv Chapman has more on today's long-awaited briefing.
The summit is focused on young people who need to be tested because they may not feel sick while they make others sick. Dr. Anthony Fauci.
The overwhelming majority now of people getting infected are young people who are out in crowds enjoying themselves who get infected. The chances are that you're going to infect someone else. And then ultimately you will infect someone who's vulnerable.
Dr. Fauci said the impacted areas may have reopened too soon or not adequately stretched the guidelines of mask wearing and social distancing, or else failed to get the public to behave accordingly. In Washington, Irv Chapman, Bloomberg Radio.
Well, U.S. governors are reversing their plans to reopen states as the country registers the biggest ever jump in coronavirus cases. Florida has banned alcohol consumption at its bars as the number of daily confirmed cases there nears 9,000. That's a new record that almost doubles the previous mark that was set just 2 days ago. Texas Governor Greg Abbott has halted the reopening of the Texas economy as Houston runs out of intensive care beds for COVID-19 patients. The Trump administration is urging the Supreme Court to overturn the Affordable Care Act. The administration's high court filing came late yesterday, just as the government reported close to 500,000 people who lost their health insurance in the pandemic have sought coverage through healthcare.gov. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts.
With perspective comes clarity.
Each week, the story seems to change.
The best experts bring you the most clarity.
Give us a sense of what's going on in the IPO market these days.
Vonnie Quinn.
Will there be an interest from LPs in newer managers here?
Paul Sweeney.
How are companies marketing their deals here in the time of COVID and social distancing?
Bloomberg Markets, weekday mornings at 10 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
There are everyday actions to help prevent the spread of respiratory diseases. Wash your hands. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Stay home when you are sick. Cover your cough or sneeze. Clean and disinfect frequently touched objects with household cleaning spray. For more information, visit cdc.gov/COVID-19. This message brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
The world's financial decision makers connect on the Bloomberg terminal. The buy side and the sell side together, collaborating across markets and countries in real time, sharing ideas, negotiating trades, and forming an influential network of over 325,000 financial professionals that helps power global markets. Isn't it time you join them? Request a demo at bloomberg.com/professional.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have arrived in Philadelphia. Local time is 3:05 p.m. and the temperature is 67 degrees. At this time, you are now free to use your cellular devices.
You know that feeling when you get to turn your phone on after the plane lands? You can have that feeling every time you drive. Make sure your cell phone is stowed away whenever you are behind the wheel.
Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. A message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, and the Ad Council.
It's a stock market driver.
Listen, that's a dream. Everyone has them, jingling away in the back of our minds. And most of the time, that's where dreams stay. So easy to ignore. Anything can drown them out, and everything does. But at Honda, we listen to our dreams. We get right up close. And on really good days, they become reality. From 2022, Honda's mainstream cars will only be hybrid or electric. Honda, the power of dreams.
There's a reason flash storage is called flash storage and not electronic non-volatile computer memory storage. From quick and efficient data retrieval to instant scalability, everything about IBM flash storage is fast. It's also cloud-ready and surprisingly affordable, with a recommended monthly price of £310 for 24 terabytes of all flash. Order by the 30th of June and pay nothing for 90 days. Find out more at ibm.biz/flash offer.
At Argos, our sale is on and so much more. Go online to shop our range of amazing deals, including tech, toys and home. And style up your home with up to half price on selected home and furniture. Visit our website to shop our full range of deals. With Argos, you're good to go. Subject to availability, conditions apply, sale ends 14th of July.
It could be a first-timer or a long-timer or a once-in-a-whiler. It could be a little or a lot. It could be the ticket under your fridge magnet. It could be someone with your first name and last and middle. It could be you. This Saturday's £15 million Lotto jackpot must be won, or thousands of you will win a share of the jackpot. Play online or on the app. Lotto from the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
Should your kids go back to school? Ask Andrea. She's a teacher.
We're doing everything we can to keep the children safe and happy at school, which is why it's great that more of those who can are coming back. Not only for their education, but for their overall well-being too. It gives them a routine, helps develop their social skills, and they get to see their friends too.
If your child is eligible, they should return to school. The government is working towards getting all pupils back in September. Stay alert. Control the virus. Save lives.
Get your cook on with Asda. With rollbacks on Hellman's Real Mayonnaise, 705 grams was £2.75, now £2. And a 6-pack of Warburton Sandwich Thins was £1, now 75p. Wham bam, add your lunchtime ham. Find thousands of rollbacks across our stores. Asda. Selected stores and lines subject to availability. Offers end 1st of July.
Buckle up, race fans.
NASCAR is back in the driver's seat.
And you can cut straight to the action here.
With the Performance Racing Network on TuneIn, you can hear PRN's live coverage of some of this year's top events.
As NASCAR's top drivers, Kevin Harvick,
Clint Boyer, and more get back on the track.
Search Performance Racing Network to listen and see upcoming races. Who says only the experts get to do the talking? On the Scuttle Puck NHL Hockey Podcast, irreverent outsiders Mike Bond and Dale Horde give their untrained opinions on all things hockey from the fans' perspective.
I don't know how you get those guys out of there. And Crosby, as great as he's been, it's just such a different era, so it's tough with the... he didn't have the crazy number of points that Orr, Lemieux, and Gretzky did. They just...
Search Scuttle Puck on TuneIn to listen.
And breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pelletta. Down Friday, on track for a losing week. The Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ trading near lows of the day. Treasuries rose as a resurgence in new virus infections begins halting progress on reopening the U.S. economy. S&P lower now by 67 points, down 2.2%. The Dow slumping 693 points, down 2.9%, and NASDAQ is down 213 points. That is a drop of 2.1%. 10 years up 14.30 seconds with a yield of 0.63%. Gold up 0.3%, 17.68 the ounce, and West Texas Intermediate crude down 1.3%, 38.23 a barrel. After earnings, Nike shares, they're trading lower now by 7.2%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Well, we are obviously tracking so closely what's happening with the virus, especially outside of New York City. In the rest of the country, the headlines are troubling, to say the least, and the numbers even more so. Michelle Cortez, health science and medical technology reporter, is with us from Bloomberg. She joins us on the phone from Minneapolis. And Michelle, before we talk to you, I want to hear a little bit from Dr. Anthony Fauci. He spoke earlier today specifically about his advice to young people.
Anyone who gets infected or is at risk of getting infected, to a greater or lesser degree, is part of the dynamic process of the outbreak. And I know, because I can understand, when I was at a stage in my life when I said, well, I'm invulnerable, so I'm going to take a risk. I think what we're missing in this is something that we've never faced before, is that a risk for you is not just isolated to you. Because if you get infected, you are part, innocently or inadvertently, of propagating the dynamic process of a pandemic.
All right, of course, Dr. Anthony Fauci, member of the White House Coronavirus Task Force, they are back in action, and we heard from them earlier today. So let's bring in Michelle Cortez. As Jason said, Bloomberg News health science and medical reporter on the phone from Minneapolis. So, Michelle, it's really been a different week again, I feel like, and the tone certainly today from the task force, a bit confusing at times. How do you add it all up right now, where we are in terms of a nation when it comes to the virus?
Things are
unusual and hard to follow. So the task force was trying to portray it as a positive situation because, in fact, we are seeing a decline in death rates. Fewer people right now are dying from coronavirus than were dying from it back in April, when we were seeing, thousands of people die every day. There were a couple of days this week where we had fewer than 300 people die. That being said, the number of new cases is skyrocketing. We hit a new peak just today with more than 40,000 people infected, and we know that deaths do follow. So that's a trailing indicator. So we could have deaths increasing. Also, since we're doing a better job of capturing these cases and finding them early, it might take longer for people to get really sick or die. Or perhaps we're just finding more people who ultimately won't die. So it depends on the framing, how you're looking at the outbreak.
All right. So the framing, I guess, Michelle, sitting here in New York, is important. And yet there is a sense of sort of like gloom and dread that I feel, at least, looking at these numbers, either validate that feeling or tell me that I shouldn't be feeling it.
Well, I think that, again, you're hitting it exactly on the head, because you have to remember that you're sitting there in New York, and you probably know someone who was infected with coronavirus. You might have known somebody who got very sick, right? So in many, many parts of the country and in many parts of the world, people don't know anyone. I don't know anyone who's had coronavirus. I don't know anyone who knows anyone who's had coronavirus. I'm in Minneapolis. And so I think that that's the difference. And another thing that they talked about at the briefing today is that this is really very regional, and not regional by state, but regional by county. There are some areas that are incredibly hard hit, and those people are panicked by these numbers. That's like people in New York City. You have lived this and you know how bad it can be. But other people don't understand it, and they think that it's maybe not as serious a problem, and certainly not a problem for them. But across the South, now more people are sadly joining your club and realizing how dangerous this might be.
So how do we, I don't know, here we are, we've got, we continue to reopen, certainly here on the East Coast, and other states are reopening, and yet you have those number of cases going up, Michelle. So I don't know, you've been smack in the middle of this. How do you, what's your anticipation of kind of what comes next?
Well, the bottom line is that this virus is not stopping. Most viruses are seasonal. We should have seen a decline in the summer. We're not seeing a decline. We know that they're seasonal. They increase in the fall. So likely we will see an increase from these higher numbers. We know from serology tests that only a tiny fraction of Americans have been infected. So this virus is going to be with us and be with us and be with us until we get a successful vaccine. When it comes to vaccines, am a show don't tell person. I want to see results. We don't even have any phase 1 results from any of these trials yet. So I don't think we can count on that. We can hope for it, but we can't count on it.
What about, though, Jason and I have talked a lot this week about Moderna and the CEO coming out and saying, I think they're going into phase 3, right? Or soon. I mean, does that give you any optimism in terms of a vaccine?
Well, that gives me optimism that if there is a successful vaccine, if there's a successful trial, which is a huge if, we will have product at the end of it. But you have to remember that most clinical trials, at least initially, are not successful. Again, we don't have phase 1 data. We don't have any firm evidence of whether this approach is going to work or not. And there are no vaccines that work the way this vaccine works. So all the science suggests that it's going to be great. All the early laboratory work, first in man numbers, they all look good, but we don't have any scientific proof yet. So we're betting a lot on the fact that, all the numbers add up, and now let's go try it in a person and see if it stands. And I'm just, show don't tell. I need to actually see the evidence. But what does work is masks and social distancing, and everyone needs to be doing that. And it's just again, if you've never been personally infected, it's not in your community, you think you're crazy for wearing a mask, like an imposter syndrome. But people need to embrace it.
All right. Michelle Cortez, you're preaching to the choir here. Our award-winning journalist based in Minneapolis covering this coronavirus. She's a must-read. I sound like Tom Keene. It's like, read Michelle Cortez, everything she writes, but it's totally true.
But she explains so much.
Unbelievable about this.
But she explains so much, right? Because those people who are in states like, I don't know anybody, I'm okay. Versus us who, we know lots of people who've also lost their lives. So it's not something to play around with. All right, you're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Carol Massar, Jason Kelly. Coming up, we've got the chart of the day with Dave Wilson right here on Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Stocks are extending their losses as coronavirus fears continue to rise. The Dow Industrials are down 695, the S&P 500 down 68, the Nasdaq down 220. Take your business elsewhere. JP Morgan Chase is revamping its policy for dealing with clients who racially abuse its workers and will cut ties when warranted. At least 4 were shown the door in the 2 weeks after the death of George Floyd. ExxonMobil is preparing to cut jobs in the U.S. as it looks to slim down. Sources say up to 10% of employees who are subject to performance evaluations could leave this year after their assessments. The cuts will not be characterized as layoffs. Women entrepreneurs wanting to maximize their income may want to move to Denver or Birmingham, Alabama. Census data analysis by Volution show women running their own businesses earn the most in those cities, a median $56,400. Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Radio.
If you love them enough to listen to them practice the same song on tuba, please be done. Over and over and over and over and over, then surely you'll check NHTSA.gov/the right seat to make sure they're correctly buckled in the back seat.
Sounds good, honey.
Check today at NHTSA.gov/the right seat. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Are you interested in a challenging and exciting career? One where you can be part of solving complex challenges across industries and geographies? Bloomberg's ever-expanding technology, data, news, and media services foster innovation, empower clients, and offer nearly limitless opportunities for career growth. Visit Bloomberg.com/careers today to view our current job opportunities. Bloomberg LP is an equal opportunity employer. The address once again is Bloomberg.com/careers.
Listen, that's a dream. Everyone has them, jingling away in the back of our minds. And most of the time, that's where dreams stay. So easy to ignore. Anything can drown them out, and everything does. But at Honda, we listen to our dreams. We get right up close. And on really good days, they become reality. From 2022, Honda's mainstream cars will only be hybrid or electric. Honda, the power of dreams.
It could be a first-timer or a long-timer or a once-in-a-whiler. It could be a little or a lot. It could be the ticket under your fridge magnet. It could be someone with your first name and last and middle. It could be you. This Saturday's £15 million lotto jackpot must be won, or thousands of you will win a share of the jackpot. Play online or on the app. Lotto from the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
How do we control coronavirus now? Listen to Claudia. She's a care worker.
I got the call from NHS Test and Trace. Told I'd been in contact with someone with coronavirus. Couldn't believe it. I had to isolate at home for 14 days. Couldn't go to work, couldn't go to the shops, couldn't get out to exercise. I didn't even feel ill. But you know what? To protect my family, my friends, my community, well, you just do it, don't you?
Stay alert, control the virus, save lives.
Looking for your daily fix of NFL news and analysis?
In that. So we had to blow it up and do Super Bowl predictions instead. Because
Look no further than the Pick 6 podcast, where CBS sports writer Will Brinson gets you up to speed with what's trending in the NFL that day, so that you're always in the know.
Yeah, it's pretty revealing of Brinson's methodology for predictions. When he gets mad at people for predicting good teams are going to win the Super Bowl or good players are going to win major awards. That's how you wind up.
Search Pick 6 on TuneIn to listen.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
To help keep you and your loved ones safe, TuneIn has the latest guidelines from the CDC. Home alone or with housemates, stay home as much as possible. Try to allow only people you live with into your home. Wash your hands. If you're sick, stay home and isolate from housemates. For the latest stories and updates on COVID-19, search Coronavirus News on TuneIn.
Are you ready for the realest first-hand take of what's happening in the NBA? On their podcast, All the Smoke, former NBA players Matt Barnes and Steven Jackson bring their fiery intensity to the mic, dishing on the latest news and drama from on and off the court without boundaries.
Half man, half amazing. My friend, our brother, Vince Carter, man. Welcome to the show.
Yo, what's up, man? What's up, my brother? Man,
Search All the Smoke on TuneIn to listen.
Who says you can't have a laugh while getting serious about America's pastime? On the daily podcast Locked On MLB, comedian and baseball fanatic Paul Francis Sullivan talks about each team, each pennant race, and everything else in the game, from rule changes and controversies to baseball cards and stadium food.
For those of you who are not familiar with me or the old show, I love to obsess over baseball. I'm talking baseball over the Super Bowl. We had a TV showing the division series during my wedding.
Search Locked On MLB on TuneIn to listen today.
To New York, Bloomberg 1130. To Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 99.1. To Boston, Bloomberg 106.1. To San Francisco, Bloomberg 960. To the country, Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
We might need to break out party hats
for
this chart.
I know.
A special milestone that's been hit.
Oh, what a nice tease for Dave Wilson.
Thank you.
I like a little Friday, Dave. I can't wait to hear the song.
Me too.
I'm like Charlie Pellet. I just can't wait for the song.
Okay, we're going to get to Dave Wilson and his start of the day in just a moment. Let's get back to your top business stories and to the aforementioned Charlie Pellet.
All right. I thank you very much. You're certainly not cranking out those party hats for today's chart of the S&P 500 index. Right now, in fact, 20 minutes to go at or near the low of the session. We've got the S&P lower now by 75, down by 2.4%. We've got the Dow down 752, a drop there of 2.9%. NASDAQ down 233, a drop right now of 2.3%. Stocks are trading near lows of the day, and Treasuries higher as a resurgence in new virus infections begins halting progress on reopening the U.S. economy. 10-year up 14/32 with the real yield right now of 0.63%. Gold is up 0.3%, 17.69 the ounce, and crude West Texas Intermediate down 1.4%, 38.18 a barrel. Investors are concerned that a second wave of the pandemic could force policymakers to reverse plans to reopen. Dr. Andrew Pekosh is a professor of molecular microbiology and immunology at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health, and he was interviewed this morning on Bloomberg Television.
The medical infrastructure has learned a lot about how to treat COVID-19 cases, and so I think we are better prepared to deal with those cases coming, but we still run the risk of running out of beds and space and the facilities to take care of patients unless we really keep down the total number of cases that are occurring.
American Airlines Group says it will be selling flights to capacity starting July 1st, abandoning caps on passenger loads that were designed to promote social distancing amid the coronavirus pandemic. American Airlines shares down 7% right now. UAL is down 7%. Southwest Airlines lower by 4.8%. Delta, rounding out the big four, down now by just about 6%. So again, recapping, equities at the low of the day. S&P down 75, a drop of 2.5%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Bring it in. Sing it. Sing it, Dave Wilson. It's a very celebratory chart.
I'd rather listen to Southside Johnny sing it myself.
There you go. But it is a very appropriate song. The NASDAQ celebrating.
Southside Johnny, man. That's like such a summer song, right? Or summer feel. Totally.
And, of course, Southside Johnny, such a New Jersey artist. So there you go.
Yeah.
And here I sit in New Jersey, just up the road from Asbury Park, where he made his name with the Asbury Jukes. In any case,
I saw Carol's hair just get a little bit bigger while you were playing that song.
Thank you so much for Stereotype Central. Like, jeez.
Can I carry on now, please?
Yes, David Wilson.
Thank you very much.
Please do.
This is all about the NASDAQ's comeback, specifically the NASDAQ 100 index. You know, there's been a number of research reports this week that have highlighted the ratio between the NASDAQ 100 index. So you're talking NASDAQ's biggest companies, you know, the Apples, the Microsofts, and so on and so on, and the S&P 500. And we saw this ratio between the two indexes peak back in March 2000, you know, at the height of the dot-com era, when you had that multi-year rally driven by internet stocks, or the first go-round, arguably, of what we've been seeing the past few years. Well, you know, you look back, you see that over the course of 2.5 years, the ratio fell as much as 69%. That's what happened during the early 2000s bear market. And it's taken more than 17 years for the ratio to get back where it was at its peak in 2000. Now, don't get the party hats out quite yet, because yesterday we saw the ratio rise above its closing record and close below it. And it looks like we're setting up for the same situation today. Early on, the index ratio above its record, but it's not holding there. But at this point, it seems like it's just a matter of time, you know, given the focus on technology that investors have had all year, given the relative strength in the likes of, you know, Apple and Microsoft and Amazon and all the rest. You know, you'd have to figure that this is going to happen. In any case.
Go ahead, Dave. Tease your chart, because I'm just surprised it's taken this long, considering how much technology has been on.
I mean, you can really see in the chart that in the past several months, the ratio's kind of spiked relative to what it was over the previous several years. It kind of made a gradual increase, and now it's taken off and gotten back to where it was 20 years ago. If you want to know more, folks, send me an email. I'll get you the chart, the explanation that goes with it, and everything I do going forward. The email address is dwilson@bloomberg.net. That's dwilson@bloomberg.net.
Demand for all things internet and tech. That's what's fueling it. Just going back to
what's going to be spinning on the Dave Wilson turntable this weekend?
You know, that's a good question. I can never quite tell. It all depends on how the spirit moves me as the weekend progresses.
All right, a little summertime, maybe
Dave Wilson.
Maybe Southside Johnny will inspire you a little bit.
Well, you know, Southside Johnny is actually doing a drive-in concert in 2 weeks down the shore.
That's very cool. That is so cool.
You gonna do it? You gonna go?
Yeah, it was a little steep for my blood, but it's actually, I think, going to be broadcast on Sirius XM. Which also has Bloomberg Radio, among other things. So
Channel 119, yeah.
Yeah, well,
do you listen to E Street Radio a lot?
Every once in a while. I especially listen to the DJ sets that Bruce has been doing the last 3 months. Bruce Springsteen, he's been doing it like every other week. And, you know, there's actually a story out in the Atlantic this week, an interview that Bruce did with David Brooks that actually highlighted some of the songs that have shown up in his playlist. And it's a pretty eclectic group of songs. So well worth checking out.
Jason and I are both Googling that as we speak.
Yeah, totally.
Dave Wilson.
That's interesting.
Thank you.
A font of information.
Yeah.
Love it. We'll talk to you. Not quite.
What? Well, I know, but
we're not done with Dave yet. We got to talk to him on the other side of the close.
My husband does say something to me that he knows something's really important if my hair is really big. So I'll give you that.
So maybe coming back at me so hot wasn't necessarily appropriate.
I don't know. I'm going to give you that, all right?
You've got your real husband, you've got your work husband. We know you.
The bookends, man.
I know, you get it from all sides.
All right, we're going to count everybody down to the closing bell, because you know what? It is Friday, and it's been quite a week lemon. I'm just going to say it on so many different levels. Stocks, by the way, they're pretty much near their lows of the session, so we're down about 2.5% on each of those major averages. So we'll count you down to that closing bell.
We will. First, let's get down to D.C. Nancy Lyons is there. She's got World National Headlines. Hey, Nancy.
Hey, Jason. Vice President Mike Pence says there's been truly remarkable progress in the battle against the coronavirus, despite a surge in a quarter of the country. He spoke during the first briefing of the White House Coronavirus Task Force in nearly 2 months. Dr. Anthony Fauci spoke about the increase in cases and pleaded for everyone to take the virus seriously.
If we want to end this outbreak, really end it, and then hopefully when a vaccine comes and puts the nail in the coffin, we've got to realize that we are part of the process.
The Democratic-controlled House has approved for the first time a bill to make the District of Columbia the 51st state. Democratic lawmakers say Congress is both the moral obligation and constitutional authority to ensure the city's 700,000 residents are allowed full voting rights and are no longer subject to taxation without representation. Speaker Nancy Pelosi urged her colleagues to vote yes.
We will bring our nation closer to the founding ideals that all are created equal and all deserve a say in our democracy.
President Trump and Republicans have been explicit in opposing statehood because Democrats would almost certainly get 2 more seats in the closely divided Senate. Defense Secretary Mark Esper is reassuring NATO allies the U.S. will consult with them on any future troop movements. His short in-person trip to NATO headquarters follows remarks by President Trump that he plans to withdraw thousands of U.S. personnel from Germany. Global news, 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Nancy Lyons.
Jenny Liss, Jewish communal leader and philanthropist, talks about why she chose the Jewish Communal Fund for her family's charitable giving.
For a lot of people, it would be the convenience factor. I don't have to track anything.
If charitable giving is an important part of your life, JCF can help you organize your philanthropy with our donor-advised fund. A fund can be established with a minimum tax-deductible contribution of $5,000. Make grants to your favorite charities, and JCF handles all the administration and reporting.
At the year end, our board awards community grants from fees and endowment income to UJ's annual campaign. We also make gifts to specific organizations, the elderly, Holocaust survivors, the hungry. The fact that we come together as a community at the end of the year to build community, that's what makes us different.
Get better at giving back. To find out more about JCF's impact, visit jcfny.org and download the Giving Report. JCF, we have a gift for giving.
Hey y'all, Jeff Foxworthy here. Now, if you've ever found yourself repeating the same thing over and over for 75 years, you might be Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
That's why I'm filling in for Smokey to switch things up, because there's a lot more to say. And I should know because my grandfather was a firefighter. And one of the things he taught me is that the people that love the outdoors the most are often the ones accidentally starting wildfires, which means always BYOB. No, bring your own bucket to the campfire. And be extra careful with things like burning yard trimmings. Don't just walk away, or chances are you might be starting a wildfire. So for the love of the outdoors, go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
This July 4th, tune in to...
At Honda, we believe in our ears. Listening can help solve some of life's biggest conundrums. For example, if a car breaks down and there's no one around to hear it, does it make a sound? The answer is yes. The new Jazz Hybrid will pinpoint your location automatically and send for help at the tap of a button. And with its personal assistant, you can find the answers to other conundrums like, where is a good vegan gluten-free pizza place with free parking? The new Honda Jazz. Hybrid and connected. Honda. The power of dreams. Connectivity subscription available in selected grades.
It could be a first-timer or a long-timer or a once-in-a-whiler. It could be a little or a lot. It could be the ticket under your fridge magnet. It could be someone with your first name and last and middle. It could be you. This Saturday's £15 million Lotto jackpot must be won, or thousands of you will win a share of the jackpot. Play online or on the app. Lotto from the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
How do we control coronavirus now? This is Scott. He's a nurse.
NHS Test and Trace helps stop the spread of the virus in our communities. If you've got symptoms, even mild ones, get a test immediately. Don't leave home for any other reason. If you test positive, we can trace the people you've been in contact with and contain the virus. So get tested and protect each other.
To get a test, go to nhs.uk/coronavirus or call 119. Stay alert. Control the virus. Save lives.
Where do sports, culture, and basketball nostalgia collide? On their podcast, Knuckleheads, NBA veterans Quentin Richardson and Darius Miles sit down with athletes, musicians, and entertainers to get brutally honest, totally unguarded conversations about everything from current events to untold stories from the golden era of sports.
Kill O'Neal. You know that, right? I tried to tip dunk all the free throw line one time.
Search Knuckleheads on TuneIn to listen.
We're all guilty of spending too much time on social media. Why not add something genuinely useful to your feed with TuneIn? Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to learn about some of the best stuff happening around the app. You might just discover your next audio obsession.
With millions of podcasts dropping new episodes all the time, how do you keep up with all your favorites? TuneIn makes it easy. Simply head to the home screen and find your new episode section to see the latest additions.
First, we're told that masks don't work. Then, we're told to wear them all the time. One week, we hear that the mortality rate is 2%. The next, well, who knows? In the time of COVID-19, there is so much uncertainty, and so much scientists are learning in real time, along with the rest of the world. So it's hard to know what you can be sure of and what's still a big question mark. Enter Podcast 19 from 538, where we'll explore the evidence behind the science in our fight against coronavirus. I'm science journalist Anna Rothschild. Each week, I'll investigate coronavirus mysteries, keep track of the latest developments on vaccines and treatments. Oh, and I'll try to edit out all the times I shush my family since I'm recording this thing from the chaos of my home.
Search Podcast 19 to listen today.
Stay close to college hoops conversation with the College Basketball Talk podcast from NBC Sports. Join Rob Doster and Bobby Reagan for weekly recaps of what's happening in every conference, nostalgic flashbacks to classic games, and big picture discussions on the future of the sport.
Yes, they found a way to ensure that there was a financial incentive for be able to get paid for K to go there, if that makes sense. But it's not, there was still a recruitment involved, right? Let me think about it like this.
Search College Basketball Talk on TuneIn to listen.
Breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellett. 13 minutes to go ahead of the closing bell. The Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ are all declining. Lots going on today. Let's head right over to the First Word breaking news desk for today's afternoon call. And here is Bill Maloney.
And good afternoon, Charlie. U.S. stocks under pressure from the start today on COVID-19, U.S. political and bank concerns. Dow's currently down 628 points. S&P's dropped 62. NASDAQ is lower by 200. The U.S. 10-year yield at 0.64%. Gold trading higher by 6. WTI crude futures are down 1%, and transports fall 183 points. Leaders to the downside in the Dow, Goldman Sachs, Nike, and JP Morgan. Only Cisco gained. And on the IPO front, Albertsons opened at $15.50. In other news, the banks did drop in the wake of these stress tests. Goldman Sachs fell 8.5%. Wells Fargo dropped 7%. In other news, Facebook and Twitter plunged as Unilever dropped U.S. social media ads, and a key FAA test flight of Boeing's 737 MAX jet is expected next week. Live from the First Breaking News Desk, I'm Bill Maloney. Charlie?
Okay, we thank you very much, Bill Maloney. And to hear live breaking news on your Bloomberg terminal, type squawk, SQUAWK on your terminal. I'm Charlie Pellett. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
I'm driving in my car. I turn on the radio.
Yeah,
about you let me drive?
Oh, no.
Who's gonna drive you home?
Honey, please, I'll do the driving.
Drive on.
Excuse me, I want to drive.
Just drive, baby.
It's the question that drives us.
This is the Drive to the Close.
That funky music will drive us till the dawn.
On Bloomberg Radio.
It is time for the Drive to the Close. Back with us is Ernesto Ramos. He leads the portfolio management and research teams for all equity strategies over at BMO Global Asset Management in the U.S. He's got, or the firm, I should say, has $277 billion in assets under management. Ernesto joining us once again on the phone in Chicago. Ernesto, good to have you here with us. Curious about the last week. We've certainly felt like a tone has changed in terms of concerns once again about the virus. We've had some trade concerns throughout the week, and we've seen it play out certainly in the equity markets. How do you see it?
Well, there's no shortage for sure of things to worry about in the equity market. And the important thing is not so much what the absolute level of worrying is. It's whether we're actually seeing things improve. And granted, things were improving at a faster pace. And this week they took a hit because of coronavirus, because of trade. But we still think that things will are on the upswing here in terms of the economic growth and the reopening, even though it may be a little bit more bumpy, a little bit less smooth. So in our portfolios, we are choosing to stay focused on high quality, strong balance sheet companies that can withstand a little bit more of the lower growth and perhaps bumpy road that's in front of us, but still deliver exposure to equity markets, because at the end of the day, equity markets right now have seen an incredibly strong policy response from the Fed and fiscal from the Treasury on the fiscal side. So that is a very important component of our bullish call on equities as a whole for the U.S.
So bullish. So bullish. Bottom line.
Bullish. Bottom line bullish, yes, but you want to stay a little bit more on the defensive side, such as the stocks in our BMO Low Volatility Equity Fund, which today is down, but is down almost 80 basis points or 0.8% less than the market as a whole, simply because of the defensive nature of the stocks and the portfolio itself, protecting our clients on the downside.
Well, Ernesto, you know Carol and I love talking about names, and one of the names we definitely wanted to talk to you about was Kroger. We spoke earlier with the CEO of Albertsons, newly public, as you know. Talk to us about Kroger and the supermarket business. I mean, talk about a place that's been important but also disrupted and all sorts of things. Talk about that name.
Well, I mean, two of the three picks that I sent over to you guys was Kroger, and the other one's Sprouts Farmers Market.
Yeah.
They're both in the supermarket business. They're both benefiting from stay-at-home, and they've managed to adapt their businesses to pickups and delivery. So these are companies that are going to do well in this environment and wouldn't do necessarily as well in terms of the stock price in a much more risk-on type environment. On risk-on days, they lag. But on a day like today, I'm pretty sure Sprouts is still up. I'm not sure about Kroger's, whether that was up a little bit, but not as much as Sprouts. But this is the exact nature of the stocks that are defensive like this. They outperform on down days and provide a counterweight to the rest of the portfolio, which might not be doing as well. So that's why we like them. We like them for the particular stressful times that we're in. But they have stable and defensive, resilient businesses.
And just going down a level on that particular sector or that particular business, why Sprouts and Kroger? What do you get sort of having both of them?
Well, we own a ton of consumer staples, so
sure.
Those are not our only two.
Yeah.
So the way we build our portfolios is we look at the potential return of every stock in the universe. It's about 1,000 stocks. And then and these stocks rank in the top 25% of our attractiveness. And that is a composite that we create out of how strong are the fundamentals of the company and how much are you paying for those fundamentals, and finally, what's the sentiment around the stock? And those three large categories of metrics are aggregated to one final score. These three companies have relatively strong fundamentals, and they trade cheaply enough that they make it into the portfolio. And then we also build a portfolio with a very strong focus on minimizing the risk on the downside, and that's also a very critical part of it. So these companies have enough attractiveness to make it into a portfolio, but most importantly, and this is the reason they're in the portfolio, they're low risk stocks that will protect you on days when the market is down, like today, for example.
Well, and I do want to point out, Sprouts is up about 2.2% today. It's up 28% so far this year. Kroger is down about 1/3 so just a little bit lower, but it's up 13% so far this year. So Albertsons, which went public today, second largest operator of supermarkets in the U.S. Are you interested? Are you going to look to maybe buy?
We don't own it, and we will buy according to what I just told you. And off the top of my head, I can't tell you what the ranking of any stock in the 1,000 universe is right now. But when the time comes to take a look at rebalancing, as we call it, our portfolio, we'll definitely pay attention to see if Albertsons coming into the mix.
Interesting. All right. Well, look forward to catching up with you in the future. Ernesto Ramos is portfolio manager for BMO Global Asset Management, joining us on the phone from Chicago. Have a nice weekend. So we're getting to the close. Rough week in the market.
Yeah,
to say the least.
Yeah, we're going to ultimately be down. But we saw this like Monday, Tuesday. We saw the tone. We talked about it. It just, you could see that once again, all of a sudden, even the stories trending on the Bloomberg, it was, so much about the virus. So we definitely have seen some things change.
Yeah, for sure. So we will get you to the close of trading. Got some other business to handle before we get toward the end of the show. And we're going to hear from Richard Marks at the end. Looking forward to that. Richard Edelman, another Richard, is going to be with us at the top of the 5. Eager to catch up with him. The tone of what's going on in corporate boardrooms. Interesting, too.
All right. This is Bloomberg Business Week on Bloomberg Radio. That closed just moments away.
Business is like a puzzle.
Listen, that's a dream. Everyone has them, jingling away in the back of our minds. And most of the time, that's where dreams stay. So easy to ignore. Anything can drown them out, and everything does. But at Honda, we listen to our dreams. We get right up close. And on really good days, they become reality. From 2022, Honda's mainstream cars will only be hybrid or electric. Honda, the power of dreams.
Should your kids go back to school? Ask Andrea. She's a teacher.
We're doing everything we can to keep the children safe and happy at school, which is why it's great that more of those who can are coming back, not only for their education, but for their overall well-being too. It gives them a routine, helps develop their social skills, and they get to see their friends too.
If your child is eligible, they should return to school. The government is working towards getting all pupils back in September. Stay alert. Control the virus. Save lives.
Formula One is back.
F1 is back on Sky Sports.
It's lights out, and away we go.
And there's never been a season like this before.
How was that fast?
No one knows where this road leads, but it's going to be a hell of a ride.
Danny and Sano can't start into each other.
Are you ready?
Brilliant madness. An absolutely perfect race.
Watch every race live. Upgrade to Sky Sports F1 today. Go to sky.com/F1 for details.
Who says only the experts get to do the talking? On the Scuttle Puck NHL Hockey Podcast, irreverent outsiders Mike Bond and Dale Horde give their untrained opinions on all things hockey from the fans' perspective.
I don't know how you get those guys out of there. And Crosby, as great as he's been, it's just such a different era, so it's tough with he didn't have the crazy number of points that or Lemieux and Gretzky did. Like, they just...
Search Scuttlepuck on TuneIn to listen.
This is Mike Golick from ESPN's Golick and Wingo. Every morning, Trey Wingo, my son, and I sit down to discuss all the news, drama, and highlights spinning the sports world that day. And with TuneIn, you can hear us whenever and wherever you go. Just search Golick and Wingo to start listening today.
Financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. There you have it. Sound of the closing bell at the New York Stock Exchange as we wrap up trading on this Friday, June 26th, and it is on to the weekend. Stocks now at the lowest in more than 2 weeks. A losing day, a losing week as well. On the week, the S&P was down 2.8%. This week, the Dow dropped 3.2%. NASDAQ lower today, lower on the week, I should say, by 1.8%. Today, NASDAQ was down 2.6%, tumbling 259. S&P was down 74, a drop of 2.4%. The Dow at the close down 730 points, a drop of 2.8%. The Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all ending the Friday session close to the lows of the day. A resurgence in new virus infections is halting progress on reopening the U.S. economy. Advertiser defections sent Facebook to its biggest drop since March, extending the market's decline. Facebook shares lower today by 8.3%. Again, to put that in context, S&P down today by 2.4%. Well, as for the market backdrop, Ernesto Ramos is portfolio manager at BMO Global Asset Management. He was our guest moments ago right here on Bloomberg Business Week.
We still think that things will be on the upswing here in terms of the economic growth and the reopening, even though it may be a little bit less, a little bit more bumpy, a little bit less smooth.
Tough day for a lot of the big bank names. They declined after the Federal Reserve yesterday capped dividends and banned buybacks through September. J.P. Morgan Chase down 5.5%. Citigroup shares lower today by 5.9%. Also, shares of Bank of America down 6.4%. Wells Fargo out of San Francisco lower by 7.4%. So again, recapping here, equities lower across the board. The Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all declining. S&P down 2.4%. After earnings, Nike shares declined today by 7.6%. The Dow down 2.8%, S&P down 2.4%, NASDAQ down 2.6%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Move around. Motion creates the motion.
I feel the earth move under my feet.
You move like they do. I've never seen anyone move that fast.
All right, people, let's move like we've got a purpose.
Company's called Movers and Shakers. They cost a little more, but that name cracked me up.
Bloomberg Business Week, Movers and Shakers, with Carol Mazur and Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
Yes, indeed, a fair amount of shaking going on this Friday, but shaking to the downside. You heard Charlie Pellet break down those closing numbers on Wall Street and finishing pretty much near our lows of the session. So selling certainly on this Friday. And Charlie mentioned for the week overall, we saw some significant decline. So where are we year to date now? We're down about 7% on the S&P 500, down more than 12% on the Dow Jones Industrial Average. And Jason, we're still seeing some gains on the NASDAQ. It's up about 8.7%. Mind you, we've had a tremendous bounce off that March low, but nonetheless, the tone this week was definitely a much more bearish one. If I look at the major industry groups in the S&P 500, all are down. Top of the pack, though, utilities, but still with a 1% decline. Bottom of the pack, communication services, which was down about 4.5%. So, yeah, the tone certainly going into this weekend. And next week will be interesting, Jason, because it'll be kind of ahead of that 4th of July weekend. People are going to be taking off. So I do think, volume might be lighter, and we'll see how that impacts the trade ultimately.
And jobs report on Thursday.
An
unusual Thursday jobs report owing to the fact that the market is closed next Friday. So meanwhile, your big outperformer on the S&P, we're going to talk about it in just a few minutes. I mean, an outperformer by a factor of 3, Gap up 19%. Easy, man.
Well, listen, I mean, this is a retailer, man, we've been talking about it for a long time. Struggling. You know, it's really lost kind of its identity of who it is. It's, you know, merchandising. I remember a time when, you know, everybody shopped at the Gap, like we all did. I shopped for my daughter all the time when she was younger. Stock's down about 32%, and that's even with that almost 20% jump today. And it was up 40%. But it just shows, all right, Gap is maybe rethinking its strategy. Maybe if we bring in some new, you know, blood, new way of thinking, some new merchandise, maybe you can start moving the needle in a good way.
Yeah, one would hope. And we're going to get into that with Kip Basine, who I'm so excited to catch up with.
I love Kip.
Haven't talked to him in a while, and he's so smart about retail stuff. On the other side of the ledger,
not so smart.
All banks. Your four worst performers on the S&P, and I believe this is just coming out of the stress test, right?
Well,
just some
absolutely.
skepticism about bank balance sheets and income statements if they are subject to more scrutiny.
Yeah, exactly, right? We had that headline last night after the stress test, and specifically, you know, they're not going to be able to do anything, right? No buybacks, and nothing with their dividends. It's got to stay at this level, at least till, I think, until the end of this year. So, you know, the Fed weighing in terms of what banks need to do. And so there's some concerns about that. And the Fed continues to be concerned about the impact of the virus on the economy. Let's also talk about maybe not so smart, I don't know, airlines.
I'm so annoyed by this, I have to say. Like, maybe irrationally so.
So, you know, here we are, we're talking about American Airlines, and we're talking about it for our audience. And so I was just kind of pulling up my phone, just kind of quick checking on some things. And in my mailbox is from American Airlines, because I'm an Advantage member, and it's email with the headline, "Expanding Our Clean Commitment." So
by jamming everybody together on a plane.
Come on, man. There are a couple of places like I just kind of don't love it. I'm not a germaphobe or anything like that. Public restrooms, mass transportation,
we're all
and
germaphobes
planes
now.
Planes, like, because you just, like, you know, you get on a plane, you just saw the people came off, and you're like, I
don't want to sit in that guy's seat. Yeah.
So anyways, Americans saying they're going to jam them in. I understand. Listen, I feel for these carriers. Their business has just come to a standstill, and they're trying to figure out their way forward. But this isn't it. This isn't it.
I don't think going back to full capacity at the moment where we're seeing all these headlines seems like the smartest move from a health perspective. Maybe from a financial perspective, yes. Health perspective, no. Let's get a quick check on volatility. The VIX up about 6.6%, closing at 34.36. It's Bloomberg.
All right, Dave, you're up.
Hi, my name is Dave.
Wilson, where are you? Wilson!
Just what do you think you're doing, Dave?
We're going for a price on Wilson. Open up the door, it's Dave. Who? Dave.
Hey, Mr. Wilson! What I love about you, Dave, is even in a day where it's predominantly to the downside, it's a bearish tone, pretty broad-based, you find a name that has done well.
Absolutely, and in this case, we're talking about Synex. It's a technology distributor that handles more than 30,000 products. The company also helps other businesses with customer service through a unit called Concentrix that it's looking to spin off. Synex was founded in 1980 and went public in 2003. The ticker is SNX. Synex's shares have been especially volatile lately. 2 years ago, they dropped more than 40%. Last year, they rallied 59%. And this year, they rose to a record in January and then plunged as much as 66% by March. Synex has been recovering since then, and fiscal second quarter results released late yesterday were a help. Earnings were more than triple analysts' highest estimate in the Bloomberg survey. Revenue beat projections. And Synex did something many other companies have shunned recently, setting up a buyback plan. The company said it will repurchase as much as $400 million of stock over 3 years, starting July 1st. That would be next week. And all this led to Synex's biggest gain in 9 months. The shares climbed more than 14.5%.
That's a pretty decent bounce.
It is. Absolutely.
All right, Dave Wilson, thank you
Just a reminder,
so much.
It's not a stock market, it's a market of stocks.
Indeed, and there are a whole lot of them, by the way, trading as a result of the Russell reconstitution. Yeah. We've had about 7 billion shares change hands since 3:30 Wall Street time. Most of that recorded after the close.
Wow. Interesting. All right, well.
Good stuff.
We appreciate you reminding us of that, Dave, and your stock and your chart, and have a lovely weekend.
Have a great, great weekend. Are you going to watch Hamilton on Disney Plus?
Yes.
Yeah, me too.
Totally.
I just reminded my husband, I'm like, do we have Disney Plus yet?
Do you?
I don't think so. So
Okay.
we're going to say,
I
well,
like
you
it.
probably do you do it for Alice? Or?
Yes. Yeah. A lot of Moana, a lot of Frozen, old Frozen, new
Let It
Frozen,
Go. Yeah.
whatever you need.
I can't wait. I think it'll be
It'll
one
be
of my
fun.
favorite
It's going to be a
shows.
big hit. Obviously it was a big hit. It's going to be a big hit on Disney Plus as well, all over again. All right, let's get to Denise Pellegrini. She's got World National Headlines. Hey, Denise.
Hey, Jason and Carol, thank you. As we've been reporting, the briefings are back. The federal government task force briefing for the first time in 2 months on coronavirus. That's as the number of cases continues to rise in Texas, Florida, and Arizona. The nation's top infectious diseases official, Dr. Anthony Fauci, pleading with people to take the virus more seriously.
You have an individual responsibility to yourself, but you have a societal responsibility, because if we want to end this outbreak, really end it, and then hopefully when a vaccine comes and puts the nail in the coffin, we've got to realize that we are part of the process.
Now, Florida cases jumping nearly 8% in the latest 24-hour period. The state also banning alcohol consumption at bars. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo says some states aren't being cautious enough.
The rushed reopenings actually increased the viral spread.
Yeah, Vice President Pence, though, says that's not true.
What we're seeing across the South today is really outbreaks. There are outbreaks that are in specific counties. In some cases, there are outbreaks that are in specific communities.
And nationally, U.S. cases are up 1.7%. That's higher than the 7-day average. And the Democratic-denominated House has voted in support of statehood for Washington, D.C. Democratic Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton says it's what the city always wanted.
D.C. residents have been fighting for voting rights in Congress and local autonomy for 219 years.
Republicans in the House and the Senate, though, say
people love a good story. They like it even better when that story is real.
Is this something strange in the numbers?
Paul Sweeney.
That seems like a big miss to me.
Bonnie Quinn.
New funds getting started in order to take advantage of what might be a moment.
Bloomberg Markets, weekday mornings at 10 Eastern.
If Russia does throw this spanner in the works, what does it do to relations going forward?
On Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com.
How important is that statement there?
Bloomberg, the world is listening.
You're fierce. You take care of business and don't hold back. Taking care of your health shouldn't be any different. You know when something's off. Don't ignore symptoms like fatigue, joint pain, and rashes. Listen to your body. It could be lupus. We're here to help you take control. Learn how at BeFierceTakeControl.org. Brought to you by the Lupus Foundation of America and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
COVID-19. Can the world reopen for business?
Give us a sense of how you're ramping up and taking care of folks on the ground.
What's the long-term impact?
Why will we not see a V-shaped recovery?
When will there be a cure or a vaccine?
How can you model that at a time when it's unclear whether we're going to see a resurgence in viruses?
The answers will emerge.
Can you give us a sense of timing?
And you'll find them here. Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
You took the first step and quit smoking, but even former smokers may still be at risk for lung cancer. That's why SaveByTheScan.org wants you to know about a new low-dose CT scan that can detect lung cancer early. It takes only 60 seconds and could save your life. You took the first step, now take the next. Visit SaveByTheScan.org for a simple quiz to see if you're eligible and talk to your doctor about screening. SaveByTheScan.org is brought to you by the American Lung Association's Lung Force Initiative and the Ad Council.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting.
At Honda, we've never looked to other car companies for inspiration. No, it's not a matter of an inflated ego. We just prefer listening to what people really need. For example, the new Honda Jazz Hybrid doesn't have the expected 6 airbags. It has 10, including one that prevents the driver and passenger from colliding with each other. And because we also listen to our conscience, all our safety features come as standard. No charge. Honda, the power of dreams.
And action!
I was offered one.
Cut. That's not on the script.
I was offered one. Get you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I was offered one.
Come, boy. I was offered one.
Don't take our word for it. 9 out of 10 people said they were offered a great value deal with O2. Get yours today, in-store, online, or by phone.
I was offered one too. O2 Retail Exit Survey 309 of 348 agreed with the statement. O2 offered me a great value deal. For full verification, see o2.co.uk/terms.
Tuesdays at KFC gonna get you like, wow, pow, chow, kapow, get down right now. If you know how, then take a bow. Because this deal's gonna raise a brow. Get 9 pieces of original recipe chicken for an eye-popping $5.99. What the... Every Tuesday at KFC. Participating restaurants ends 18th of August 2020. Tuesdays only, subject to availability, not available online.
At Argos, our sale is on and so much more. Go online to shop our range of amazing deals, including tech, toys and home. And style up your home with up to half price on selected home and furniture. Visit our website to shop our full range of deals. With Argos, you're good to go. Subject to availability, conditions apply, sale ends 14th of July.
There's a reason flash storage is called flash storage and not electronic non-volatile computer memory storage. From quick and efficient data retrieval to instant scalability, everything about IBM flash storage is fast. It's also cloud-ready and surprisingly affordable, with a recommended monthly price of £310 for 24 terabytes of all flash. Order by the 30th of June and pay nothing for 90 days. Find out more at ibm.biz/flash offer.
It could be a first-timer or a long-timer or a once-in-a-whiler. It could be a little or a lot. It could be the ticket under your fridge magnet. It could be someone with your first name and last and middle. It could be you. This Saturday's £15 million Lotto jackpot must be won, or thousands of you will win a share of the jackpot. Play online or on the app. Lotto from the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
Should your kids go back to school? Ask Andrea. She's a teacher.
We're doing everything we can to keep the children safe and happy at school, which is why it's great that more of those who can are coming back, not only for their education, but for their overall well-being too. It gives them a routine, helps develop their social skills, and they get to see their friends too.
If your child is eligible, they should return to school. The government is working towards getting all pupils back in September. Stay alert, control the virus, save lives.
When the world stopped, people in our local communities didn't. At the Co-op, we want to say thank you to all the local heroes. Daksha wanted to help the NHS, so she and her husband Parish cooked 50 meals for a hospital in Harrow. But they didn't stop there. They've set up the Community Response Kitchen, delivering to hospitals, schools and homeless shelters across London. Now they're delivering between 1,000 and 3,000 meals every day, and they've achieved all this with no funding, just the support of local businesses and local people. To Daksha and Parish and all the local heroes that keep our communities going, the Co-op says thank you.
Are you fully informed on the NBA? On the NBA Hangtime podcast, veteran sports writers Sekou Smith and John Schumann analyze the latest NBA news, storylines, and discussions with guests from around the basketball universe.
Isaiah Thomas joined us here on the Hangtime podcast. Isaiah, good morning.
Everybody's doing well. As you know, my daughter tested positive.
Search NBA Hangtime on TuneIn to listen.
24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pelletta. 2-week low for the U.S. stock market. The Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ all declining today. Stocks dropped as a resurgence in new virus infections began halting progress on reopening the U.S. economy. S&P down 74, now at 3,009, down today by 2.4%. The Dow dropped 730, down 2.8%. NASDAQ down 259. That was a drop of 2.6%. 10-year up 13.30 seconds. The yield 0.64%. Gold up 0.4%. 17.70 the ounce. And West Texas Intermediate crude down 1.6%. 38.11 a barrel. I'm Charlie Pellett. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week.
Bloomberg Business Week on Bloomberg Radio. In case you got a little nervous all of a sudden, but we have a reason. Gap and Kanye West getting together, and they're going to sell products in Gap stores. And this has sent Gap shares, as we've talked about, just skyrocketing. Kim Basine is on this story, got the story. He's U.S. luxury reporter at Bloomberg News, and he joins us on the phone in Minneapolis. Kim, nice to have you here with us. How are you?
I am great. Nice touch with that Kanye track there.
You know, what's funny is that we have not been playing a lot of music since we've been home in the pandemic and things like that, but we broke this rule for you. I mean, in part because we love you and we miss you, but also because this story is awesome and really is a big moment. Tell us what's going on with Gap and Kanye.
Yeah, Kanye West signed a long-term deal with Gap to sell a new line of Yeezy apparel. It's called Yeezy Gap, and it'll have men's, women's, and kids products. The clothes are expected to debut in stores and online next year. Now, it's important to note that this is not a one-off. This is not like a collaboration. This is a multi-year partnership, and we hear that Kanye's been traveling to Gap HQ in San Francisco from his ranch in Wyoming to work on the line.
That's a huge difference, right? Because that's what I was wondering, too. Like, initially, when I saw the headline, I'm like, well, wait, if it's just a one-off thing, it's like, okay, they'll get a temporary boost. But this shows, to me, Kim, like a significant potentially shift in terms of how the Gap is going to merchandise and offer a product.
Yeah, and it's the analysts I've spoken with see this as a pretty promising first step for Gap as it continues to try to turn around, right? So it could really use some help right now dealing with a difficult turnaround effort. Back in January, called off a plan to separate Old Navy from the rest of the business. Last quarter, sales were down 50% due to the store closures and the pandemic. But even before that, it was struggling to attract shoppers, especially to that namesake Gap brand.
Tell us about the importance culturally and commercially of Kanye.
I mean, Yeezy, his fashion label, is known for two things, at least so far. Like, it's the sneaker line with Adidas that always sells out and has his own, and he also has his own couture fashion shows. This will add an apparel line to add more accessible prices to all that. Now, this will give Yeezy so much exposure, and with the global distribution, Gap has more than 3,000 stores plus that e-commerce site. I mean, there is a concern that it'll dilute other parts of the brand, but that amount of exposure is rare to have.
And I don't know, do people think it will be a significant moment in Gap's history at this point in a good way?
I mean, investors are certainly hoping that Kanye is going to make Gap cool here. Shares rose, 40-something% today? That's the biggest gain on record that we have, going back to 1980. So there's certainly some hope there.
What's the history or the brief history or some examples of where we've seen this work in other cases in terms of these collabs, as the kids say, Kim?
I mean, the most recent one, I think we've seen the most extreme level of connectivity between a brand and a celebrity has been LVMH with Fenty. They're doing an entire fashion house with Rihanna, and that is a big deal for a company that doesn't start new fashion houses often. You're also seeing Ivy Park is with Adidas as well. That's Beyonce's athletic wear label, and of course Kanye's wife, Kim Kardashian West, has been in talks with Coty, which is the cosmetics company, for a potential partnership. We reported on that previously. And her sister, Kylie Jenner, is already on board with Coty, and they recently launched her skincare line over in Europe.
Yeah, I was wondering about that. You know, this family, the extended family that Kanye married into, pretty good about these sorts of tie-ups, right?
And they've been really busy lately, huh? And now with Gap. I mean, we last spoke with Kanye West back in April. He was at his ranch in Cody,
I remember
Wyoming
that.
out there.
That was such a great story.
Yeah.
I've been reading a lot
about his plans.
This is like so wild. I was reading to a bunch, your reporting and some other coverage on this. And I guess a few years ago, Kanye West, had said he wanted to be like the Steve Jobs of the Gap, which is kind of interesting to find him here at this moment. What's the compensation deal? What's the financial arrangements between these two?
So he will make some money off this, of course. His compensation is tied to sales, and his business will earn royalties and potential equity under the terms of this deal. It's important to note that this line does not include footwear, because that Yeezy sneaker line is sold through an arrangement with Adidas, which is signed all the way through 2026. So you're not going to see any sneakers out there anytime soon, as long as that company has any say over it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right.
Well, Jason's going to be happy because when he goes somewhere and his luggage gets lost, he runs into the Gap.
That's true. That's true. And now I'll be that much more stylish or that much more ridiculous if I try and pull off something from the Yeezy line at the Gap.
Do you have any Yeezys? No?
No, I don't. I don't. I don't think
Do
I
you? Do you, Kim?
No, I don't either.
Okay.
All right. That makes me feel a little bit better because you are so much cooler than I am. All right. Kim Basine, thank you so much. We love catching up with you. Luxury reporter for Bloomberg Pursuits, good friend of our show.
Listen, I think I think of the Target model, the old model where they used to bring in designers and bring in lines and stuff and then had an in-house, designer. Like, I think it's smart. It's how you revive a brand. I think the Gap needs to bring in. I think this is interesting. I think you could really shake it up.
Yeah, I mean, listen, you look at some of you walk up and down Fairfax in Los Angeles and you see, Supreme and Huff and those guys. I mean, it's all about the collaborations, the collabs. Come on, get with it, folks.
Can't wait till you lose your luggage
again. My kids are cringing
again.
somewhere in this house.
Yeah, your co-host is cringing.
Yeah, they just feel, the nerdiness. It's Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Stocks sold off to close out the week on increasing fears of a resurgence of coronavirus infections. The Dow Jones Industrial Average tumbled 730, the S&P 500 dropped 74, the Nasdaq fell 260. Facebook and Twitter shares fell sharply. Unilever pulled its ads from the social media platforms, citing hate speech and polarized political postings. Facebook later said it will label all voting-related posts and expand its definition of hate speech. Amazon is buying autonomous vehicle startup Zoox for a reported price of over $1 billion. While it could help reduce delivery costs, Amazon is also touting Zoox for its ride-hailing ambitions. A maker of sensors used in self-driving vehicles could soon be public. Sources say Velodyne LiDAR is in talks to merge with Graph Industrial, the so-called blank check company. Velodyne's technology is used by car makers, including Ford and Mercedes. Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Radio.
There are everyday actions to help prevent the spread of respiratory diseases. Wash your hands. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Stay home when you are sick. Cover your cough or sneeze. Clean and disinfect frequently touched objects with household cleaning spray. For more information, visit cdc.gov/COVID-19. This message brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
COVID-19. On days when it seems there are nothing but questions.
What about the pandemic emergency purchase program in Europe?
What's the medical side of this?
We try to ask good ones.
How long until we have an answer on what drugs can help us fight this pandemic?
How do you think this has the potential to rattle markets?
Does that mean we should shut down?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com.
It's a rather controversial question being asked.
Bloomberg, the world is listening.
If knowledge is power,
Listen. That's a dream. Everyone has them, jingling away in the back of our minds. And most of the time, that's where dreams stay. So easy to ignore. Anything can drown them out, and everything does. But at Honda, we listen to our dreams. We get right up close. And on really good days, they become reality. From 2022, Honda's mainstream cars will only be hybrid or electric. Honda, the power of dreams.
It could be a first-timer or a long-timer or a once-in-a-whiler. It could be a little or a lot. It could be the ticket under your fridge magnet. It could be someone with your first name and last and middle. It could be you. This Saturday's £15 million Lotto jackpot must be won, or thousands of you will win a share of the jackpot. Play online or on the app. Lotto from the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
To help keep you and your loved ones safe, TuneIn has the latest guidelines from the CDC. Outdoor gatherings? Wash your hands and don't touch your face. Stay at least 6 feet from people you don't live with. Wear a mask. Don't share food, toys, or other items, and avoid shared surfaces. Participate in events like these infrequently. For the latest stories and updates on COVID-19, search Coronavirus News on TuneIn.
This is Mike Golick from ESPN's Golick and Wingo. Every morning, Trey Wingo, my son, and I sit down to discuss all the news, drama, and highlights spinning the sports world that day. And with TuneIn, you can hear us whenever and wherever you go. Just search Golick and Wingo to start listening today.
Let's be honest, we all spend too much of our day on social media. But at least you can spend your endless scroll time to discover new things on TuneIn. Follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to always be in the know about the best new stuff streaming in the app. From breaking news stories and live sporting events.
He does! Fabry wins it!
To standout stations and podcasts. Stay in touch with TuneIn.
Buckle up, race fans.
NASCAR is back in the driver's seat.
And you can cut straight to the action here.
With the Performance Racing Network on TuneIn, you can hear PRN's live coverage of some of this year's top events.
As NASCAR's top drivers, Kevin Harvick,
Clint Boyer, and more get back on the track.
Search Performance Racing Network to listen and see upcoming races.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston, Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco, Bloomberg 960 to the country, Sirius XM Channel 119, and around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
So this is Bloomberg Business Week. I'm Carol Master along with Jason Kelly. I feel like when these kinds of stories hit the terminal, we're all talking about them and sharing them around.
Most read. Absolutely. Janet Lawrence going to be with us to talk about colleges, sports, and a bleak outlook, to say the least.
All right, first up, let's get back to your top business stories. Some of the news after the close. Here is once again Charlie Pellet.
Thank you very much. We are keeping an eye on those rising coronavirus cases. Today, stocks declined, with the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ falling to the lowest in about 2 weeks. Treasuries rose as a resurgence in new virus infections began halting progress on reopening the U.S. economy. Advertiser defections sent Facebook to its biggest drop since March, worsening the market's decline. Facebook lower today by 8.3%. S&P 500 index down 74, holding above 3,000, heading into the weekend of 3,009, down today by 2.4%. The Dow down 730, down 2.8%, and NASDAQ dropped 259, down 2.6%. 10-year up 14.30 seconds with a yield this Friday of 0.63%. Drew Mattis is chief market strategist at MetLife Investment Management. He was interviewed this morning on Bloomberg Television.
You know, with the coronavirus surging in some parts of the country, I mean, I think you've seen the response. The equity market thought that, perhaps we were out of the woods and we could look forward to a time without the coronavirus. That's being shown to have been a little on the optimistic side.
Boeing and federal regulators are preparing to hold a critical set of test flights on the 737 MAX early next week, which would mark a milestone in its return to service after being grounded for more than 15 months. And Amazon is buying autonomous vehicle startup Zoox. It's a move that could potentially help the company create a formidable opponent to ride-hailing and food delivery companies. Amazon shares lower today by 2.2%. Again, recapping, equities did decline decline today. Gold up 0.3%, 17.69 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude down 1.3%, 38.21 a barrel. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Jason Kelly and Carol Masser here with you. Want to check in with one of our pals, Janet Lauren, endowments reporter for Bloomberg, joining us on the phone from New York. So college football, everybody was very gung-ho about it, Janet, maybe a month or so ago, certainly over the past few weeks. Now the picture a lot cloudier. Morehouse, the historically black college down in Atlanta, alma mater, I believe, of both Spike Lee and Martin Luther King Jr.
Yeah.
They said today, no football. That seems to be a little mini trend that's coming along here.
Yes, on Monday, Bowdoin College in Maine said the same thing. Now, their reason was because they were not going to have very many students on campus, and they just couldn't field teams. So, we're starting to hear schools say this is really important in terms of safety. We just can't do it, and I won't be surprised if you hear more schools doing this. However, it's a lot of money, that football team. I mean, if you look at the West Alabama Chamber of Commerce, $25 million statewide economic impact every time there's a home game. University of Alabama.
God, yeah. Right, exactly. I mean, think about it. It's directly to the school. It's the surrounding community. I mean, if you think about, right, the amount of money that these sports franchises essentially have at the college level or university level, I mean, it's a big deal, Janet.
It's a huge deal. I mean, if you look at the University of Nebraska, they have the record for most consecutive Saturday sellout football games, and that record dates back to 1962.
Yeah. Well, the other thing, and you know this better than we do, Janet, is that especially in some of these big time college football programs, they really fund the entire athletic program in many ways. You've got a lot of money losing sports who rely on football and all the revenue that it brings in to just keep operating.
That's exactly right. They subsidize lots of teams, and it's going to have a huge impact on the athletic department going forward.
Janet, how much of it, and we've been kind of watching this, when the Ivy League kind of weighs in on this, once they say kind of what they're going to do, does everybody kind of fall in place?
Well, we wrote about that in a story yesterday, that was kind of an unusual circumstance, that they had to make a decision about a game that was imminent. And we quoted the president, Larry Bacow, talking about his concerns with the exponential growth of the virus in a very short period of time. And they made their decision, and they had been meeting with the 7 Ivy League presidents had been meeting over the weekend and the week before, coming up with a bunch of contingency plans. And you think of all the brain power behind that decision, all the medical schools of public health, and they decided they could not do it. And then all the other teams, and finally the NCAA followed. But it did. They're not an athletic powerhouse, and
right?
There was some heft with that decision, because then Duke followed and Kansas followed, and then all the dominoes fell. But someone had to go first.
Yeah.
Well, and it's interesting, too, to think about, Janet, and I say this, you and I both lived in Atlanta for a time. That's where we first met about 150 years ago. And, we know firsthand how big college football is in Atlanta. I mean, if you want to get a reservation anywhere on a Saturday afternoon, as you know, just figure out when all the big SEC games are going to be on. You mentioned the economic impact, and they're going to feel a ton of pressure to play football one way or the other.
That's exactly right. And, right now you have some early movers. They feel like they need to do this for the right reasons. You hope it doesn't become a political football, because, it is a huge economic driver.
Yeah.
But if you look at football teams are very expensive to run, because just the sheer number of players. And, that gets into a lot of other issues. It's a very expensive sport to run. And a lot of schools are having, financial problems, especially as we don't know what's going to happen in the fall if students really are going to make it back.
Janet, as you just talk, we just got about 20 seconds left. As you're talking to everybody, I mean, does it feel like it is a case that everybody's going to kind of follow one another, or is it a case that everybody's just trying to figure out it on their own?
Well, the colleges are meeting with their conferences. So, you may see decisions come out by conference, by school. It just really, it depends. Everything is so unknowable going forward. We just have to wait and see.
Yeah. All right. Janet Lauren, thank you so much. Endowments reporter for Bloomberg, joining us on the phone from New York. I mean, the other thing that I will say, I won't make Janet say it, is NCAA not awesome about making decisions for everybody, not always really looking around the corner, not the most forward-thinking organization out there.
Yeah.
That may not be too controversial a statement, candidly, but not sure I totally trust them to make the right decision because economics, they're a huge driver, and college sports such a big business.
Yeah.
But as Janet pointed out right there at the top, the economic impact, especially in these college towns, it's massive. It's massive.
The consequences of all of this, man, we're just going to have to keep an eye on it. All right, let's get back to World and National News headlines. Back on over to Denise Pellegrini. Hi, Denise.
Hey, Carol. U.S. coronavirus cases are up again, 1.7% in the latest 24-hour period here in the U.S. Texas, Florida, Arizona among the hotspots after reopening. And Vice President Mike Pence says this is different, though, from what the tri-state area went through.
What we're observing today, and I've heard this from Florida, I've heard this from Texas, and some other states along the Sun Belt, is that we're seeing more and more young people under the age of 35 who are testing positive.
And the nation's top infectious diseases official, Dr. Anthony Fauci, of course, says the fact that so many young people are involved just makes it harder to slow the spread of the virus.
A substantial proportion of the people who are getting infected do not know they're infected. They're not symptomatic. They're asymptomatic individuals. The classic paradigm of identification, isolation, and contact tracing to actually contain that is very difficult to make that work under those circumstances.
And a bunch of coronavirus-related developments. Let's go through them here. Florida, Texas, banning alcohol consumption at bars to try to slow the spread. Arizona activating emergency plans as hospital cases surge. San Francisco delaying reopening plans. And New Jersey eyeing opening schools in the fall, Carol, but smaller classes, some remote learning involved. And more Black Lives Matter and other protests are planned across the country for this weekend. Mayor Bill de Blasio says substantial cuts are coming to the NYPD. Global News, 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. I'm Denise Pellegrini.
President of the Jewish Communal Fund, Zoya Raines, and her husband, Robert Friedman, Jewish activists and philanthropists, talk about why they chose the Jewish Communal Fund for their charitable giving.
As very busy working parents, we wanted to focus more on the charity part of it and wanted to focus more on our children and less on the administration.
The Jewish Communal Fund is one of the oldest and largest donor-advised funds, but at the same time, they're totally up to date and have state-of-the-art systems for us to access and manage our contributions online. The assets in our fund at the JCF grow tax-free, so we can generate more charitable dollars to support the charities that we care about most.
Let JCF minimize your taxes and maximize your charitable giving.
We're incredibly passionate about our charity, and the JCF allows us to focus more on the charity and less on the administration and the headaches.
For more information about Jewish Communal Fund, visit our website at jcfny.org and request a new fund kit.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. I came out in the 11th grade. Nobody was embracing you. The kids were cruel. It was very difficult to be gay. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma. The hard part was determining that I was going to do it, but I definitely didn't do it alone.
At age 30, with the help of her mentor, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
I have a mentor, Maria. She convinced me to continue my education and to finish what I started to get my diploma. Just never judges. She's a true role model. If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, go get it. You can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
How long How much? How many?
Listen, that's a dream. Everyone has them, jingling away in the back of our minds. And most of the time, that's where dreams stay. So easy to ignore. Anything can drown them out, and everything does. But at Honda, we listen to our dreams. We get right up close. And on really good days, they become reality. From 2022, Honda's mainstream cars will only be hybrid or electric. Honda, the power of dreams.
How do we control coronavirus now? Listen to Claudia. She's a care worker.
I got the call from NHS Test and Trace. Told I'd been in contact with someone with coronavirus. Couldn't believe it. I had to isolate at home for 14 days. Couldn't go to work, couldn't go to the shops, couldn't get out to exercise. I didn't even feel ill. But you know what? To protect my family, my friends, my community, well, you just do it, don't you?
Stay alert, control the virus, save lives.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Are you ready for the realest first-hand take of what's happening in the NBA? On their podcast, All the Smoke, former NBA players Matt Barnes and Steven Jackson bring their fiery intensity to the mic, dishing on the latest news and drama from on and off the court without boundaries.
Half man, half amazing. My friend, our brother, Vince Carter, man, welcome to the show.
Yo, what's up, man? What's up, my brother? Man,
Search All the Smoke on TuneIn to listen.
Looking for your daily fix of NFL news and analysis?
In that. So we had to blow it up with the Super Bowl predictions instead.
Look no further than the Pick 6 podcast, where CBS sports writer Will Brinson gets you up to speed with what's trending in the NFL that day, so that you're always in the know.
Yeah, it's pretty revealing of Brinson's methodology for predictions. When he gets mad at people for predicting good teams are going to win the Super Bowl or good players are going to win major awards. That's how you wind up.
Search Pick 6 on TuneIn to listen.
This is Mike Golick Jr. from ESPN's Golick and Wingo. Every morning, Wingo, Dad, and I sit down and discuss all the news, drama, and highlights spinning the sports world that day. And with TuneIn, you can hear us whenever and wherever you go. Just search Golick and Wingo to start listening today.
To help keep you and your loved ones safe, TuneIn has the latest guidelines from the CDC. Outdoor gatherings, wash your hands and don't touch your face. Stay at least 6 feet from people you don't live with. Wear a mask. Don't share food, toys, or other items, and avoid shared surfaces. Participate in events like these infrequently. For the latest stories and updates on COVID-19, search Coronavirus News on TuneIn.
Want to get all your college sports news in one place? Turn on the Yahoo Sports College podcast to hear experts Dan Wetzel, Pat Forty, and Pete Thamel break down the latest NCAA stories from the football field to the basketball court and beyond.
I think Reggie should do a video of him running to Heritage Hall and front flipping in. Remember that famous front flipping the end zone that he did? Wasn't he the one who made that popular?
I think he was.
I think he was, yeah.
Search Yahoo College Sports Podcast on TuneIn to listen.
Buckle up, race fans.
NASCAR is back in the driver's seat.
And you can cut straight to the action here.
With the Performance Racing Network on TuneIn, you can hear PRN's live coverage of some of this year's top events.
As NASCAR's top drivers, Kevin Harvick,
Clint Boyer, and more get back on the track.
Search Performance Racing Network to listen and see upcoming races.
24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. 2-week low for the U.S. stock market. Treasuries rose as a resurgence in new virus infections began halting progress on reopening the U.S. economy. S&P tumbled 74 points, ending the week just above 3,000 to 3,009, down today by 2.4%. Losing week as well for the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ. Today, the Dow Jones Industrial Average declined 730 points, down down 2.8%. NASDAQ down 259, a drop of 2.6%. The 10-year up 14.30 seconds, the yield 0.63%. Gold up 0.4%, $17.70 the ounce. And West Texas Intermediate crude down 1.3%, $38.23 a barrel. Recapping equities lower, a Friday sell-off, S&P down 74, a drop of 2.4%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Well, a story that certainly captured the sports world this week and over the past couple of weeks is the plight of Bubba Wallace, a NASCAR driver, the only African-American NASCAR driver. We had an exclusive interview with him via our Brian Wall of Bloomberg Quick Take. Let's listen a bit to that, and then we're going to talk to Hannah Elliott.
No matter when it was made, when the knot was tied, when the noose was tied, that somebody still out there did it as a joke, a bad joke, whatever. It was relief that I wasn't a target of that, but still someone out there has created that, and they'll have to live with that. But knowing that they did all the intensive research and went to those measures to, again, back up the point that there was a noose in my garage, just shows the character and the testament of NASCAR and how they will not stand for any of those kinds of acts.
All right, that was Brian Wall of Bloomberg Quick Take asking a question of Bubba Wallace. Of course, you're listening to Bubba Wallace there. I mean, I just feel like it's a new era when it comes to NASCAR, and you do wonder about the consequences of all of this. Auto columnist for Bloomberg Pursuits, Hannah Elliott, writes about NASCAR amid the backdrop of the last month, racism and Black Lives Matter. She joins us on the phone from L.A. Hannah, there's a lot going on when it comes to NASCAR. Initially it was the Confederate flag and the displaying of that, and then, of course, everything that happened with Bubba Wallace. Where is NASCAR, and what does it mean kind of for their future and really their future audience?
Hi, Carol and Jason. I'm so glad to be talking about this. It's such an interesting time for NASCAR. Taking it back a little bit to answer your question, in 2015, racing organizers tried to ban the Confederate flag then and failed. This flag has been ubiquitous at races, in the stadium, in the fields, on the way going in, people flying it. It's been around for forever. And they tried to ban it in 2015 and failed. And now we see Bubba Wallace really stepping up, and he's been lobbying to get it removed for some time. But, of course, the events of the last few months, and especially the last month, have really pushed to the forefront again. And we've succeeded. The flag is banned. So this is a really pivotal moment for NASCAR. The viewership has been dropping. Last year, NBC reported that the broadcast of the Cup Championship was down basically 51% from 2015. Wow! And part of the reason it's significant, and part of the reason for that is because of course, viewership is dropping. Sponsors drop out too when viewership drops, and also they don't want to be associated with a sport that has a Confederate flag in the stands. It doesn't really fit with corporate culture or policies now. So the fact that now the Confederate flag is banned, the fact that now Bubba Wallace has really stepped up and been a shining light for the sport means now potentially sponsors might want to get involved again. It means that there potentially could be a much more diverse viewership. According to ratings, we see that roughly 80% of the audience for NASCAR is white. It has historically not been incredibly diverse. There are fewer than 10 ever black NASCAR drivers, ever, in 72 years of racing. So there's a lot of work to be done. But to answer your question, now is almost exciting because we see that this is really a pivotal moment in the history of NASCAR. Now's the time for them to change, and we're seeing signs of change.
Yeah.
Well, and it's going to be a hard road back and not a straight line, Hannah, as we saw this week. And you heard Bubba Wallace talking with Brian Wall about this noose that was in his garage, and there have been all sorts of explanations and investigations, and it is an indicator of how I don't want to say complicated this is, but how easy it is for people to be like, oh, well, that's not really a thing, because initially we thought, the noose was hung there because of him, and then they said, no, it was there for a while, and basically people have had to come back and say, okay, but the fact that it was there for a while is kind of an issue. Like, let's not dismiss this out of hand. As if that makes it okay. It's like, oh, that noose, that was there for a long time. I mean, give me a break. This is crazy.
Right. It almost makes it worse.
Right.
The fact that there had been a random noose hanging for months.
Right.
How was that not addressed immediately? And, it's funny that you mentioned it, because we're celebrating, the Confederate flag has been banned because of what it means in the history of our country. And it's like we're celebrating it like it's a great thing, but it's kind of insane that it's come to now that we have banned it. I mean, can we imagine a Confederate flag being waved at football games or baseball games or NHL games? No.
Right.
So this has really been kind of an outlier with the rest of professional sports. And ultimately, that is constricting NASCAR. That means NASCAR isn't sustainable. It means NASCAR isn't going to evolve along with the rest of the world forward. So to your point, the noose thing was a very, very odd scenario. The fact that the FBI literally formed an investigation to get to the roots of it, the whole thing was very weird.
It's disturbing, right? The whole idea that it was there for that long. So Hannah, as you write in your story, I mean, NASCAR, it's got such a Southern heritage to it, and a very, I feel like, a very known audience. I mean, does, in your view, and as you talk to folks for this story and others, does NASCAR find its way forward with a new audience that enables them to kind of exist?
Well, I'm an optimist, so I'm going to say yes, it can. If NASCAR, don't forget, and you make a great point, the NASCAR's cars were first developed to run to outrun cops in the South for people who are running moonshine across county line.
Right.
So there is a real heritage there, and that's a great story. That's a great part of the history. Of course, I do believe they can hold on to that and also do the work required to move forward into the present and the future with the rest of us who realize that in order to be successful and relevant, and in order to attract sponsorships, you have to be inclusive. There is no room for celebrating slavery, to be frank. There's just no room for that. So I everything NASCAR officials are saying is that they recognize this, and they want to do the work to expand and include other people. And there's a lot of work to be done.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, at some point, we all have to ask the question, do we want to be on the right or the wrong side of history? It's just that simple.
Right.
All right. Hannah Elliott, you're the best. Always good to hear your voice. Thanks for this important story. A great collab between you and Brian Wall of Bloomberg Quick Take.
All right. For those of you listening in New York and San Francisco, watching on YouTube, Bloomberg Business Week continues. If you're listening on Bloomberg 99.1 in the nation's capital, Sound On with Kevin Cirilli. That is coming up next. And coming up next, we're going to check in with Richard Edelman, founder and CEO of the communications firm that bears his name. That's coming up next.
Bloomberg Daybreak Asia. Are you seeing a lot?
At Honda, we believe in our ears. Listening can help solve some of life's biggest conundrums. For example, if a car breaks down and there's no one around to hear it, does it make a sound? The answer is yes. The new Jazz Hybrid will pinpoint your location automatically and send for help at the tap of a button. And with its personal assistant, you can find the answers to other conundrums like, where is a good vegan gluten-free pizza place with free parking? The new Honda Jazz. Hybrid and connected. Honda. The power of dreams. Connectivity subscription available in selected grades.
How do we control coronavirus now? Listen to Claudia. She's a care worker.
I got the call from NHS Test and Trace. Told I'd been in contact with someone with coronavirus. Couldn't believe it. I had to isolate at home for 14 days. Couldn't go to work, couldn't go to the shops, couldn't get out to exercise. I didn't even feel ill. But you know what? To protect my family, my friends, my community, well, you just do it, don't you?
Stay alert, control the virus, save lives.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
This is Mike Golick Jr. from ESPN's Golick and Wingo. Every morning, Wingo Dad and I sit down and discuss all the news, drama, and highlights spinning the sports world that day. And with TuneIn, you can hear us whenever and wherever you go. Just search Golick and Wingo to start listening today.
Who says you can't have a laugh while getting serious about America's pastime? On the daily podcast Locked On MLB, comedian and baseball fanatic Paul Francis Sullivan talks about each team, each pennant race, and everything else in the game, from rule changes and controversies to baseball cards and stadium food.
For those of you who are not familiar with me or the old show, I love to obsess over baseball. I'm talking baseball over the Super Bowl. We had a TV showing the division series during my wedding.
Search Locked On MLB on TuneIn to listen today.
Buckle up, race fans.
NASCAR is back in the driver's seat.
And you can cut straight to the action here.
With the Performance Racing Network